Chapter 2558. After dealing with the space pirates, Ji Tianqing returned to the battleship. Bai Long's face was full of admiration as he could not help but exclaim. "Master, it looks like you've already refined the space law and mastered it very well. That's a medium-level law, and you've mastered it with your true immortal realm strength. It's really incredible and shocking, the three realms." Ji Tianqing ignored him and said calmly, "Let's continue forward." "Okay." Bai Long did not feel embarrassed. He answered happily and continued to drive the battleship forward. Unknowingly, another month had passed. Tianqing's battleship crossed half a galaxy and finally arrived at Purple Cloud Planet. Bai Long saw a huge planet in the void ahead of him that was still hundreds of thousands of miles away. It was shining with a dazzling purple light. He could see that the planet shrouded in purple light was several times larger than the Five Elements world. Compared to the purple planet, the other planets in the void were so small that they were not worth mentioning. After seeing the purple planet's appearance, Bai Long's eyes flashed with a cold light and his lips curled into a sneer. He sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing and reported, "Master, we're about to arrive at Purple Cloud Planet." Ji Tianqing, who was cultivating in seclusion and comprehending the law power, quickly woke up. He ended his cultivation, walked out of the secret room, and went to the cockpit. Bai Long stood in the middle of the cockpit, standing on a dark golden disc. The disc was engraved with array patterns, which were used to control Tianqing's battleship. Ji Tianqing stood in front, staring at the white light screen in the sky, observing the scene in the void. The scene in all directions was reflected on the light screen, clear and direct. Ji Tianqing stared at the light screen for a moment and said with a frown, "Purple Cloud Planet looks peaceful, but it's already been occupied by the Heaven Punishers. If I'm not wrong, Purple Cloud Planet must be heavily guarded, and no one can enter or leave as they wish." The white dragon looked indifferent and said proudly, "So what? Let's find a secluded place and try to penetrate the purple light shield. Then, we can enter the Purple Cloud Star." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and continued, "Entering the Purple Cloud Star is not a difficult task. The main problem is, what should we do after entering the Purple Cloud Star? Bai Long, pay close attention to the situation on Zixiao Star. I need to think about the next plan." After that, Ji Tianqing left the cockpit. Bai Long continued to steer the warship towards Zixiao Planet. 3 days later, the battleship flew close to the Purple Cloud Star, very close to the purple light shield. At this time, the Tianqing battleship stopped and floated in the void. White Dragon carefully observed the surrounding situation, his eyes sharp and sharp. Through the screen in the cockpit, he could clearly see the situation on Zixiao Planet. A gigantic purple light barrier enveloped the peaceful star. Every once in a while, the Heaven Slayer race's battleships would fly around the purple light barrier. Of course, White Dragon could tell that they were the Heaven Slayer race's patrol team responsible for protecting the Purple Cloud Star. However, other than the Heaven Slayer race's battleships, there were many other battleships of different styles flying in from all directions and entering the Purple Cloud Star. White Dragon could tell that these strange battleships came from various large worlds and races. He could not help but feel puzzled and murmured to himself, "Strange. The Purple Cloud Star has already been taken over by the Heaven Slayer race. Shouldn't it be under martial law? Why can so many alien battleships enter the Purple Cloud Star?" Filled with doubts, he steered the battleship to the left. In the void, there was a dark gold battleship heading towards the Purple Cloud Star. Whoosh! The Tianqing battleship was huge and extremely fast. It quickly stopped that battleship. The dark gold battleship immediately stopped and looked warily at the Tianqing battleship. Bai Long left the Tianqing battleship and flew in front of the dark gold battleship. He gestured with his hands and feet. Then, the hatch of the dark gold battleship opened, and several alien race elites in golden armor flew out. These alien race elites looked like elephants. Their bodies were as large as mountains, and they had 4 thick hooves and huge trunks. Bai Long recognized them as the Golden Elephant race. He racked his brains to recall and spoke to them in the language of the Golden Elephant race. After a long stuttering conversation, he finally understood the situation and the reason. Thus, he thanked the Golden Elephant race elites and returned to the Tianqing battleship. The dark gold battleship did not linger and headed straight for the purple cloud star. Bai Long hurriedly found Ji Tianqing and reported everything in detail. "Master, I've heard the news. The Golden Elephant race battleship just now came from the faraway Golden Elephant star. Half a year ago, that star was taken over by the Heaven Slayer race, and the Golden Elephant race has become their slaves." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked with interest, "If they are slaves of the Heaven Slayer race, then what are the Golden Elephant race doing on the purple cloud star? Could it be that the Golden Elephant race has brought a huge amount of resources and wealth to pay tribute to the Heaven Slayer race?" Bai Long hurriedly nodded and explained with a smile, "Master, you are so wise. That's right. The cowards of the Golden Elephant race are here to pay tribute to the Heaven Slayer race. Moreover, it's not just the Golden Elephant race. More than 100 races from other worlds have come to pay tribute to the Heaven Slayer race and swear allegiance to them. I heard from the Golden Elephant race's God Lord that the Heaven Slayer race is holding a myriad kingdom divine assembly. All races that have submitted to the Heaven Slayer race or want to surrender have to pay tribute and participate in the assembly." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said disdainfully, "Ha ha ha. There are only about 300 mortal worlds in the entire purple cloud star zone. Where did the myriad kingdom divine assembly come from? The Heaven Slayer race is bluffing and bluffing. They want to intimidate the major worlds and capture them without shedding a drop of blood." Bai Long nodded and sneered. "Ha! Nothing can be hidden from Master's sharp eyes. That's right, that's the Heaven Slayer race's intention. After all, the South conquering marshal was severely injured by you and has been in seclusion to recuperate. He can't lead the army. The Heaven Slayer race's forces are too scattered, so it's difficult for them to invade the major worlds one by one. That's why the Heaven Slayer race created this myriad kingdom divine assembly to win over the hearts of the people. I predict that the Heaven Slayer race will use the major races to deal with the worlds that refuse to submit." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, "Yes, there are only so many schemes that the Heaven Slayer race can use. It's easy to understand. Since they want to hold the myriad kingdom divine assembly, we can take advantage of it." Bai Long's eyes lit up. He asked, "Master, what do you mean?" Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Pretend to submit to the Heaven Slayer race and enter Purple Cloud Star using the excuse of participating in the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly." "Brilliant." Bai Long smiled proudly and gave him a thumbs up. Then, he asked, "What happens after we enter Purple Cloud Star?" Ji Tianqing said snappily, "I don't know the situation in Purple Cloud Star. How can I have a specific plan? We'll talk about it after we enter Purple Cloud Star. We'll act according to the situation." End of chapter. This book came from Chapter 2559. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing started to look for his target. The Tianqing battleship was special. It was difficult for him to disguise himself as a tribe and enter Purple Cloud Star alone. Moreover, a battleship made of dawn stones would easily arouse suspicion. Therefore, Ji Tianqing decided to find a foreign tribe's battleship and sneak in. He left the battleship and entered the void alone to keep the Tianqing battleship. After waiting patiently for 3 days in the dark and cold void, he finally found his target. Swoosh! A silvery white battleship that was 2,000 feet long sped through the void toward Purple Cloud Star. The silvery white battleship had a beautiful design like a crescent moon. Even the body of the battleship was engraved with a crescent moon pattern. "You are the one," Ji Tianqing murmured. He quickly entered the state of invisibility and approached the battleship. Soon, he encountered the crescent moon battleship. While the battleship was not paying attention, he quietly flew to the battleship and entered the white light. The silver light that the battleship emitted was the powerful star divine power. Coincidentally, Ji Tianqing had just refined the star rules and his control of the star divine power had reached the level of meticulous detail. Swoosh! He easily passed through the star divine light and stuck to the silver battleship. He took out the sword of burial of heaven and drilled a fist-sized hole in the battleship. He then shrunk his body and entered the battleship. After entering the battleship, he maintained his state of invisibility and moved forward cautiously. As he searched, he released a powerful spiritual consciousness and shrouded the entire battleship. After a short while, he figured out the situation in the battleship. The Middle Empty God Realm battleship carried hundreds of Martial Sage Realm guards and 3 Martial God Realm elites. The leader was a silvery white young lady in a long silver dress. The young lady's strength had reached level 7 Martial God Realm. However, she looked like she was about 17 years old and she still looked young. She looked very similar to a human. However, she had a pair of wings on her back and a silver crescent moon mark on her forehead. The 2 martial gods following the girl with the crescent moon were old women in loose cloaks and godly robes. Their strength had reached the 5th layer Martial God Realm too. In addition, the battleship's cargo hold was filled with a large amount of cultivation resources and precious star moon divine stones. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while before he recalled the information. If I'm not wrong, these should be the Moon Spirit clan. They use the silver moon as their natal power. 1,000 years ago, when the sword god roamed the starry sky, he came into contact with the 100 races. The Moon Spirit tribe was one of them. Therefore, not only could Ji Tianqing recognize the Moon Spirit clan's language, but he could also understand their language. The Moon Spirit's battleship. At this time, Ji Tianqing's divine sense detected that the Crescent Moon Girl and 2 old women were talking in a hidden room. The Crescent Moon Girl's mood was heavy and low, and there was a strong resentment between her brows. She said coldly with her back to the 2 old ladies, "Even now, I can't get over it. The despicable and cruel Heaven Punisher tribe invaded the Moon Spirit world and started a great war. They slaughtered billions of our people. Their evil deeds brought about a devastating blow to our tribe. Not even 1,000 years can erase the pain. Why do we still have to bow to the Heaven Punisher tribe and offer up our tribe's treasure? Priestesses, are we really going to surrender to the Heaven Punisher tribe? If our people know about this, they will hate us and see us as a disgrace to the Moon Spirit tribe." The young lady was agitated. Her voice was filled with indignation and unyielding. However, the 2 old ladies in divine robes shook their heads and sighed bitterly. They tried to comfort her. "God Lord Silvermoon, don't you understand? We can't go against the tide. The Heaven Punisher tribe is the most powerful tribe in the entire star region. They are blessed by the gods. Even if we did our best and sacrificed all our experts to stop the Heaven Punisher fleet's invasion, we would still die. However, if we die one after another, the Heaven Punisher will send another fleet to invade. Who can stop them? God Lord, what time is it now? Why can't you understand? Even if you are unwilling, please respect the Council of Elders' decision. We must submit to the Heaven Punisher tribe. Even if we become slaves to the Heaven Punisher tribe, we can at least protect 20 billion Moon Spirit people. As long as we are still alive, there is still hope for us to rise again. If we oppose the Heaven Punisher tribe, they will have the favor of the gods. Our Moon Spirit race will only perish." God Lord Silvermoon furrowed his brow and fell silent upon hearing the advice of the 2 priests. Her expression was heavy and sorrowful, her eyes brimming with unwillingness. However, she also understood that the 2 priests were not lying. If they clashed with the Heaven Punisher tribe, they would not have a good end. After a long silence, God Lord Silvermoon said in a low voice, "I can obey the Council of Elders' decision and participate in the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly and surrender to the Heaven Punisher tribe. However, I will leave this matter to the two of you. I will remain on the warship and enter seclusion to cultivate for a while. It was clear that God Lord Silvermoon was unwilling to submit, much less kowtow to the Heaven Punisher tribe and beg for peace. The two priests were instantly put in a difficult spot. They bitterly smiled and tried to persuade her, God Lord, aren't you being a little too obvious? You're already here, so how can you not participate in the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly? The Heaven Punisher generals will definitely see through your intentions. If they take their anger out on our race, the Moon Spirit Star will be in trouble. But God Lord Silvermoon was unmoved. She firmly said, this God Lord disdains to wag my tail and beg for mercy. Otherwise, I would rather die. I've made up my mind. Do as you see fit. The two god-robed priests suddenly stiffened, and their expressions became somewhat ugly. But there was nothing they could do, nor could they force God Lord Silvermoon. At this moment, the Crescent warship arrived near the Violet Barrier and was stopped by two Heaven Punisher warships. The two priests could only withdraw from the secret chamber and inform the Heaven Punisher of their identities and intentions. Once the two old women left, the gloomy secret chamber fell silent once more. God Lord Silvermoon stood in the darkness, staring at the light screen on the wall and then at Purple Heaven Star, her eyes flashing with deep hatred. Just when her thoughts were in turmoil and her emotions were in turmoil, a deep and dignified male voice resounded through the secret chamber. Since you've decided to submit to the Heaven Punisher race, wag your tail and beg for mercy as a slave, why are you going back on your word now? God Lord Silvermoon was jolted out of his stupor by this voice. He quickly turned around and scanned the area with sharp eyes. Who is it? Who's speaking? Come out. But despite God Lord Silvermoon's cold voice echoing through the secret chamber, no one appeared. The cold and indifferent male voice spoke once more. If you don't want to live and be enslaved by the Heaven Punisher race, why have you come here to surrender? Indecisive people are often the ones who cause the deaths of their clansmen. God Lord Silvermoon instantly tensed up. With a whoosh, she pulled out her divine sword and coldly stared into the darkness. The matters of my moon spirit race have nothing to do with this, sir, so you have no right to comment. Just who is this, sir? When did you intrude on my race's warship? End of this chapter. This book came from Chapter 2560. God Lord Silvermoon was on full alert. She didn't dare to believe that someone had snuck onto the warship and overheard her conversation with the two priests. Just how strong was this person to possess such skills? Hundreds of thoughts flashed through her mind as she tried to guess at this person's identity. At this moment, the dignified man spoke once more. Who I am is not important. What is important is that you follow your heart and not disgrace the integrity of a God Lord, much less the faith of the Moon Spirit race's people. God Lord Silvermoon's face stiffened as she sternly asked, what relationship does your excellency have with the Moon Spirit race? Why are you interfering in the affairs of my race? The dignified male voice replied indifferently, me. Just like you, I am a God Lord of a world in the purple firmament star zone. Just like the Moon Spirit race, the people under my command were invaded and massacred by the Heaven Punishing race. Hearing this, God Lord Silvermoon frowned and jeered, so that's how it is. Didn't you also come to participate in the Myriad Kingdom God Conference and surrender to the Heaven Punishing race? Yet you dare to shamelessly boast and urge me to resist? What right do you have? Ha ha ha. The young man coldly laughed. No, you're wrong. I didn't come to participate in the Myriad Kingdom God Conference, much less to surrender. God Lord Silvermoon frowned and asked, then what are you doing here? The young man hiding in the shadows replied, to assassinate the Southern Marshal and destroy the Heaven Punishing army. Do you believe me? What? God Lord Silvermoon froze for a moment before regaining his wits. Shaking his head, he said, ha ha ha. What shameless boasting. How much do you know about the Heaven Punishing race? Do you know what kind of terrifying existence the elusive Southern Expedition Marshal is? The young man calmly said, my understanding of the heaven-punishing race might not be as deep as yours. But the number of heaven-punishing experts I've killed with my sword is definitely more than what you've seen. As for the Southern Marshal, he's just a fifth-degree true god. Hiss. God Lord Silvermoon couldn't help but suck in a cold breath of air in shock. Just a fifth-stage realm true god. Nothing. Without waiting for the young man to answer, the two priests in divine robes returned. After entering the secret chamber, the two old women looked around with puzzled expressions. Divine Master, who were you talking to just now? Divine Lord, what's wrong? What happened? As they spoke, the two old women examined God Lord Silvermoon, their gazes falling on the divine sword in her hand. God Lord Silvermoon hurriedly put away his divine sword and put on a stern expression. It's nothing. You heard wrong. Oh right, what's the situation outside? The two old women suppressed their doubts and stopped asking about this matter. They bowed and explained, Divine Master, the patrol guards of the Heaven Punisher race stopped us. After inspecting the battleship and asking about our intentions, they let us pass. Now that we have entered the Purple Cloud Star, we are on our way to the Heaven-Punishing Deity Palace to participate in the 10,000 Kingdoms God Conference. God Lord Silvermoon expressionlessly said, I understand. All of you are dismissed. The two old women looked at each other. Then, they bowed and took their leave. The secret chamber quickly fell silent once more. God Lord Silvermoon scanned the surroundings with blazing eyes as she softly asked, Hey! Are you still there? Here, the young man who was hiding in the dark replied. God Lord Silvermoon instantly relaxed, his wariness vanishing. She hesitated for a moment before asking, Sir, did you infiltrate my race's battleship because you wanted to infiltrate the Purple Cloud Star to carry out the assassination? The young man replied. God Lord Silvermoon raised her eyebrows and playfully said, Sir, I am filled with admiration for your daring. However, the Heaven Punisher race is the strongest race blessed by the gods, and the Southern Marshal is a true god expert. Sir, for you to be so confident, could you also be a true god expert? If you aren't, then how is this any different from sending you to your death? The hidden young man calmly replied, There are some things that someone has to do. It has nothing to do with life or death, success or failure. Upon hearing these words, God Lord Silvermoon instantly felt a deep sense of respect, and his clear eyes became even brighter. She turned to the dark corner of the secret chamber and respectfully clasped her hands. Sir, Silvermoon admires your courage and will to fight. Please accept Silvermoon's bow. The hidden young man indifferently said, Empty courtesy is useless. If you are also unwilling, if you still have any hot-bloodedness or dignity left, you should not have submitted to the Heaven Punisher race. God Lord Silvermoon instantly frowned and bitterly smiled. Sir, since you heard my conversation with the two priests, you should also know that I had no choice. As the leader of the Moon Spirit race, I must consider the overall situation. The young man calmly said, Since that's the case, I won't force you. I will only ask you one thing. I want to infiltrate the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly and use this chance to kill the Heaven Punisher. Are you willing to help me? God Lord Silvermoon hesitated, a look of struggle and embarrassment on her face. Forget it. Just treat it as if I never came. The young man hiding in the dark sighed in a bleak tone, as if he was a little disappointed. God Lord Silvermoon was alarmed and hastily called out, Hold on. The hidden young man seemed to stop and asked, How about it? God Lord Silvermoon no longer hesitated. Suppressing her complicated thoughts, she firmly said, I'm willing. Sir will never submit to the Heaven Punisher race and would rather die in battle for revenge. Such resolve and daring makes Silvermoon feel ashamed of her inferiority. Since Silvermoon and Sir are connected by fate, how can Silvermoon just sit by and watch? Sir, I thank you for your warning and for enlightening Silvermoon so that she will no longer be confused. After saying this, God Lord Silvermoon bowed to the darkness. Sir, how can I help you? The hidden young man calmly said. It's very simple. After you participate in the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly and offer your tribute, don't be in a hurry to leave. Help me take a few people to the Zero Continent. The Zero Continent? God Lord Silvermoon raised an eyebrow and asked in confusion, that's one of the 5 continents of Violet Heaven Star, and it's also the most prosperous continent. Many Heaven Punishers are stationed there. Sir's request is that simple. Of course, the young man replied. I agree, God Lord Silvermoon decisively agreed. However, a hint of craftiness flashed through her clear eyes, and she playfully said, but I can't easily believe your words. Only if you stop hiding and come out to speak with me can you prove your sincerity. It was clear that God Lord Silvermoon was extremely curious about this mysterious young man. God Lord Silvermoon had originally believed that this man would not show himself in order to maintain his mystery. But to her surprise, the moment she spoke, a golden light flashed in the corner of the secret chamber. Whoosh! A handsome young man in a white robe appeared in the secret chamber out of thin air. Chapter 2561. The white-robed youth quietly stood in the center of the secret chamber, his hands clasped behind his back. God Lord Silvermoon's eyes widened in shock as he stared at the white-robed youth. You are, a human God Lord? This was God Lord Silvermoon's first time leaving the moon spirit world. She had never seen a human before. But she had been well-read since she was a child, reading countless ancient biographies and seeing descriptions and legends of the human race. The handsome, valiant, and mysterious white-robed young man in front of her was exactly what she imagined a human powerhouse to look like. The white-robed youth did not hide the truth and nodded. God Lord Silvermoon was even more surprised as she curiously asked, since you are a human, how do you know the language of the moon spirit race? The youth shook his head and expressionlessly said, it's a secret. God Lord Silvermoon pursed her lips, somewhat disappointed as she muttered to herself, humph. Acting all mysterious. The youth did not reply, only said in a dignified voice, your wish has been fulfilled. If there's nothing else, before he could finish, God Lord Silvermoon hastily waved her hand and asked, don't. I have another question. What is your name? The white-robed young man answered decisively, Tianheng. Tianqing. God Lord Silvermoon muttered this name, a smile on her pretty face. I'll remember you. I hope that you won't disappoint me. Disappoint? Tianqing raised an eyebrow and calmly said, I only bring hope to my friends and despair to my enemies. God Lord Silvermoon once more pursed her lips and shot him a skeptical glance. Humph. Overconfidence is arrogance. Tianqing did not reply, nor did he want to explain. God Lord Silvermoon had been snubbed, so she changed the topic. Tianqing, in another 4 hours, we will reach Heaven Punishing Divine Palace to take part in the Myriad Countries Divine Assembly. What plans do you have? And didn't you want me to help you bring a few people? Where are they? Tianqing did not respond to the question about the plan. He indifferently said, the time is not yet right. Once you offer the tribute, I will hand them over to you. After saying this, he turned and vanished into the darkness. Hey! God Lord Silvermoon frowned and unhappily stomped his foot. You scoundrel, how could you be so rude? I haven't even finished speaking. However, Tianqing had already hidden in the darkness and was completely silent. God Lord Silvermoon was bored, so he gloomily left the secret chamber and went to the treasury to check on the tributes. Unknowingly, 4 hours had passed. The Silver Moon battleship faced the golden sun and flew in the white sea of clouds. 10,000 miles ahead, a dazzling golden light appeared in the sea of clouds. Looking from afar, one could vaguely see that there were dozens of majestic palaces within the dazzling light and shadow. Without a doubt, the group of majestic palaces was the heaven-punishing divine palace. Around 15 minutes later, the Silver Moon battleship arrived outside the heaven-punishing divine palace and stopped in the spacious plaza. The square was paved with supreme-grade spiritual jade and had a radius of 100 miles. Around the square, there were tens of thousands of soldiers in black armor standing guard, looking majestic. In the center of the plaza were 3 massive statues. The statue in the center was more than 10,000 feet tall, depicting a dignified middle-aged man with the face of a man and the body of a lion. This man wore dark golden armor and a dazzling crown. This was the supreme leader of the heaven-punishing race, Great Emperor Heaven-Punishing. On either side of Great Emperor Heaven-Punishing was a statue that was more than 8,000 feet tall. These 2 statues were also dignified experts of the heaven-punishing race who looked down on the world. They seemed to be Great Emperor Heaven-Punishing's left and right arms. It was obvious at a glance that these 2 statues were probably the left and right protectors. After passing by Great Emperor Heaven-Punishing statues and continuing deeper into the plaza, one could see several majestic palaces. Every palace was magnificent, extremely luxurious and dignified. There was a huge signboard above the gate of the palace in the middle. The words, Heaven-Punishing Divine Palace, were written on it. Outside the gate of the Heaven-Punishing Divine Palace, there were 99 steps leading to the plaza. Every step of the stairs was guarded by 2 guards in black armor. More than 100 martial gods of various appearances from various worlds stood respectfully at the bottom of the stairs, waiting quietly. Without permission, they did not dare to step onto the steps, much less enter the heaven-punishing divine palace. The expressions and gazes of all the experts of the foreign tribes were extremely complicated. Some of them were filled with reverence as they waited respectfully. Some of them appeared to be respectful, but deep in their eyes, they were filled with hatred and humiliation. Some of them had complicated emotions, and their expressions were unreadable. It was as if they were suffering from great torment. After all the experts in the plaza had been defeated by the heaven-punishing race. This time, they had traveled across the starry sky to Purple Cloud Planet to participate in the 10,000 countries holy meet and offer tributes to the heaven-punishing race. They had been invaded by the heaven-punishing race, and countless people had been killed. Yet, they still had to offer tributes and beg for mercy. How humiliating was this? However, when the experts arrived at the heaven-punishing divine palace, they still had to wait in the plaza. Without permission from the heaven-punishing race, they could not even take a step onto the steps. This was an even greater humiliation. All the experts of the foreign tribes understood that the heaven-punishing race was intentionally humiliating them. But they could only endure the humiliation and continue to wait. Whoosh! The Silver Moon warship flew over from the distance and landed on the plaza. In a flash of light, God Lord Silvermoon put away the warship. She and the 2 priests appeared on the plaza and began to walk toward the heaven-punishing divine palace. The 200 Moon Spirit Race guards remained on the Silver Moon warship and were being carried by God Lord Silvermoon. Her spatial ring was also filled with priceless tributes. Rustle, rustle, rustle. With light footsteps, God Lord Silvermoon and the 2 priests quickly arrived at the center of the plaza. God Lord Silvermoon stopped and looked up at the 3 towering statues, his face calm as he examined them. But a group of heaven-punishing guards immediately flew over. The captain of the guard sternly rebuked, "Hurry and leave. Do you think that the emperor of my race is something that lowly commoners like you can admire?" A thick sense of humiliation welled up in God Lord Silvermoon's heart. Her face chilled, and a cold light flashed through her eyes. However, the 2 priests hurriedly bowed and apologized to the captain of the guards before escorting God Lord Silvermoon away. God Lord Silvermoon could only suppress her anger and humiliation, silently lowering her head and walking toward the heaven-punishing divine palace. She reached the edge of the plaza and the steps leading up to the divine palace. She and the 2 priests, like the experts of the other races, quietly stood and patiently waited. No one came to ask or inform them when the myriad kingdom god assembly would begin. The blazing sun in the sky slowly set, and night gradually descended. Over 100 alien race experts were still standing where they were, not daring to utter a single word of complaint. In the next 2 days, 10 some more groups of foreign experts arrived, all of them here to offer tributes. God Lord Silvermoon was getting impatient. He sent a message to the secret room in the Silvermoon battleship. "Tianqing, are you still there?" But no one answered. Chapter 2562. God Lord Silvermoon called out several more times, but she received no response. Little talk following a dream. Only now did she realize that Tianqing had left the Silver Moon battleship some time ago. Strange, when did he leave the battleship? Why didn't I sense him at all? This scoundrel comes and goes without a trace. He's far too mysterious. I wonder if he has the strength of a true god, if he can successfully assassinate the southern vanquishing marshal. God Lord Silvermoon expressionlessly stood at her original spot, seemingly patiently waiting. In truth, all sorts of thoughts were flashing through her mind, all of them concerning Tianqing. Unknowingly, she even began to worry for Tianqing. After a long while, she finally came back to her senses. When she thought back to those thoughts, her cheeks burned as she thought to herself, What's wrong with me? I'm worried about a strange and even a little annoying fellow. He's so cold and arrogant. I don't care if he lives or dies." Although that was what she was thinking, she couldn't help but look around again after a short while. She quietly observed the plaza to see if Tianqing would appear. At that moment, a group of black-armored guards from the heaven-punishing race walked over from nearby. There were 6 guards in total, 5 of them wielding halberds while the captain had a longsword at his waist. The 6 guards walked past the crowd, their eyes looking straight ahead, their expressions dignified and arrogant. But the black-armored guard at the very back of the group glanced at God Lord Silvermoon as he walked past her. He even winked at her. This sudden sight caused God Lord Silvermoon's body to tremble, and her eyes widened. She almost thought that she was seeing things. But she could clearly see that the guard really had winked at her. It's him. That look. I can't be wrong. It's definitely him. God Lord Silvermoon instantly recognized him, and her mind was reeling with shock. But she immediately came back to her senses and looked around in a somewhat guilty manner. Seeing that the 2 priests and the foreign race experts around them did not notice this detail, her heart finally settled back into her stomach. She stared at the back of the guard, watching him climb the steps into the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace, her heart brimming with anticipation and shock. This guy, when did he leave my battleship? What method did he use to disguise himself as a guard of the heaven-punishing race and enter the heaven-punishing Divine Palace so openly? This was too crazy. This guy is crazy. There was no doubt that the heaven-punishing guard was Tianqing in disguise. God Lord Silvermoon did not understand his methods, nor could he figure out how he had done it. However, to Tianqing, this was a walk in the park for him and he had a lot of experience. When the Grand Marshal returns, the Myriad Kingdom God Assembly will begin. By then, let those lowly commoners submit to the Grand Marshal and obediently offer tribute. This will be a surprise for the Grand Marshal. The guard captain hurriedly flattered, "General, you are so thoughtful to come up with the idea of the Myriad Kingdom God Assembly." By then, when the Grand Marshal sees such a grand occasion, his anger will definitely dissipate, and he will even reward you handsomely. General Dian Xing was very pleased with these words. After stroking his beard and pondering for a moment, he thought of another idea and sneered, "Since we want to humiliate those lowly commoners, we have to do it thoroughly. Go and announce the news, let all the lowly commoners kneel outside the palace, hold the tribute with both hands, and raise it above their heads. If anyone doesn't do it or slacks off, capture them and torture them as a warning to the others." The guard captain immediately grinned and sneered. He hurriedly saluted and said, "General, this move of yours is really wonderful. Since those lowly commoners have abandoned their dignity and attacked our clan for survival, we will tear their dignity to shreds and trample on them. Only in this way can we let them know how powerful our clan is. Only death awaits those who oppose my clan." "That's right, that's right." General Jian Xing nodded proudly and waved his hand to signal the guard captain to pass on the order. Thus, the guard captain bowed and left the palace. Ji Tianqing and the 4 guards also turned to leave. But at this moment, General Jian Xing's gaze locked onto Ji Tianqing. He suddenly frowned and shouted, "You! Stay here!" Ji Tianqing stopped in his tracks, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The other 4 black-armored guards looked at him at the same time, showing sympathy and pity in their eyes. Because they knew that Ji Tianqing was doomed. Chapter 2563. The 4 black-armored guards had always followed General Jian Xing and were under his direct command. Therefore, they knew a secret. When the heaven-conquering fleet attacked Purple Cloud Planet, they were not only met with resistance from countless experts, but they were also attacked by an ancient giant beast. It was a gigantic ancient divine beast that could cover the sky and the sun. It had the power to destroy heaven and earth. It was rumored that it was the guardian divine beast of Purple Cloud Planet. Its appearance was like a divine bird soaring in the sky. Its entire body was golden and dazzling, even more dazzling than the sun. When it spread its wide wings, it could cover 1,000 miles of the sky. When it waved its huge claws, it could easily destroy the heaven-conquering fleet. When the divine bird spread its wings, it could cross thousands of miles in an instant. It was as fast as the aurora. Therefore, the guardian divine bird was the most difficult to deal with. It was even more powerful than the divine masters of Purple Cloud Planet. If it were not for the guardian divine bird, the Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal would not have spent more than 40 years and sacrificed hundreds of thousands of soldiers to conquer Purple Cloud Planet. After the war, Purple Cloud Planet was enslaved by the Heaven-Conquering Fleet. Many experts had died in battle, and the divine masters were basically all dead. However, the guardian divine bird had survived. Of course, the divine bird had been severely injured and was on the verge of death. The Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal had wanted to kill the divine bird to prevent future trouble. However, when he found out about the divine bird's background and its true identity, he gave up on the idea. He imprisoned the divine bird in the depths of the divine palace and used a powerful divine power and divine array to suppress the divine bird in the darkness. Then, he ordered General Jian Xing to be in charge of this matter. Every 10 days, he would send a small amount of golden sun stones to the divine bird to replenish its energy and heal its injuries. The purpose was to keep the divine bird alive so that its power would not dissipate and it would die from exhaustion. Everyone who knew about this understood the Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal's intention. He wanted to tame the divine bird. After all, the divine bird's combat power at its peak was comparable to his warship. Moreover, the divine bird had intelligence and thought. It could continue to grow and become stronger. The Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal wanted to tame the divine bird as a mount so that it would be easier for him to roam the void in the future. However, the divine bird had an extremely stubborn personality. Even after being imprisoned for a few years, it still refused to submit and was very irritable. The guards who sent the golden sun stones to it did not have a good ending. More than half of the people were killed by the divine birds. Even if a small number of people managed to escape, they were severely injured and crippled. In the past few years, more than 2,000 guards have been killed or injured. Therefore, when General Jian Xing asked Ji Tianqing to stay, the 4 black-armored guards thought of this at the same time. While they pitied Ji Tianqing, they also secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, General Pointing Star didn't choose them. What are you waiting for? Don't you need to do anything? General Jian Xing looked at the 4 black-armored guards and reprimanded them sternly. The 4 black-armored guards immediately shrunk their necks. They hurriedly bowed and left the hall. Only General Jian Xing and Ji Tianqing were left. General Jian Xing took out a black pouch from his interspatial ring and handed it to Ji Tianqing. Here are 10 pieces of golden sun rock. You know what I mean. As he spoke, General Jian Xing stared at him sternly. However, Ji Tianqing was not afraid at all. He said calmly, "General, I don't understand." Ha ha ha. General Jian Xing sneered and said in a contemptuous tone, "Boy, I didn't realize that a small guard like you could be so shrewd. You don't even bat an eyelid and you dare to play dumb in front of me." Although Ji Tianqing did not understand what was going on, he had a bad feeling. General Jian Xing saw that he was silent, so he simply said, "Take these golden sun rocks and send them to the Golden Sun Palace. Give them to the divine bird." After that, he added, "This is an order. If you dare to disobey, I will kill you now." Ji Tianqing suddenly realized that this task was definitely life-threatening. He showed an appropriate expression of fear. After hesitating for a moment, he slowly reached out and took the pouch. He bowed his head and said, "Yes, sir." After that, he held the black pouch with both hands and turned to walk out of the palace. General Jian Xing stared at his back and sneered. He murmured, "Little fella, you dare to show off in front of me with your little tricks. Ha ha ha. Good luck to you. Don't be killed by the divine bird." Ji Tianqing heard what he said, and his eyes became even more gloomy. After leaving the heaven-punishing palace, he walked toward the depths of the palace expressionlessly. On the way, he found a guard in black armor and asked him about the location of the Golden Sun Palace. The guard's expression suddenly changed, revealing a strong sense of dread. However, the guard still showed him the way and patted him on the shoulder. He sighed and said, "Brother, did you offend General Jian Xing?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, "What do you mean?" The guard just shook his head and did not explain anything. He quickly walked away. Ji Tianqing was full of doubts and walked toward the Golden Sun Palace. 15 minutes later, he arrived at the gate of the Golden Sun Palace. This magnificent palace was located in the deepest part of the palace complex. It was quiet all around. There were only a few guards in black armor standing guard. No one was moving around. Ji Tianqing arrived in front of the gate and explained his purpose to the guards at the gate. The guards hurriedly opened the door and watched him enter the palace with sympathetic or gloating eyes. The Golden Sun Palace looked sacred from the outside, but the inside was dark. As soon as Ji Tianqing entered the palace, he felt a powerful true god-level array. It was emitting terrifying energy waves. He released his divine sense and immediately saw the situation in the palace. He saw that in the palace, which was thousands of feet wide, there was a stone platform that was hundreds of feet tall. It almost occupied the entire palace. The black and red stone platform was engraved with divine array patterns. It was covered with a layer of dark red light. The inside of the stone platform was sunken like a huge abyss. There were thousands of dark red light pillars that intersected like ropes, forming a huge net. Ji Tianqing stepped toward the high platform and was about to use his divine sense to explore the situation in the abyss. At this moment, a deafening roar suddenly sounded from the abyss. Roar! It was clearly the sound of a bird, but it was like the roar of a divine dragon. It contained a terrifying aura. At the same time, a pair of huge golden eyes slowly opened in the abyss. The terrifying sound waves reverberated in the main hall, shaking the hall and causing the red light to explode. The black-armored guards guarding outside the main hall also felt a great pressure despite the thick palace walls and the array. Immediately, they all revealed looks of fear. Alas, it seems that kid is finished. Poor guy. He was probably torn to pieces by the divine bird. Tisk, tsk. He was unlucky. The black armored guards discussed for a while and quickly returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Chapter 2564. In the gloomy hall. Ji Tianqing stood at the edge of the high platform and looked down at the abyss below him. There was a huge golden figure in the abyss that was enveloped by a dark red light. It was a golden divine bird that was as big as a mountain. It stretched its long neck and raised its head high. It had a sharp beak and a golden crest on its head. Its feathers were like golden dragon scales that glowed with a dark golden light. Its huge golden eyes stared at Ji Tianqing. There was no emotion in its eyes. They were filled with coldness. Ji Tianqing and the golden divine bird looked at each other in silence. However, the abyss's entrance was sealed by the red light, so the golden divine bird could not rush out. If not for this, the golden divine bird would have opened its beak and torn Ji Tianqing to pieces. Even so, the golden divine bird could still unleash a terrifying power that could penetrate the seal of the array and release powerful attacks. In the past few years, more than 2,000 heaven-punishing guards had been killed or injured in this way. After a while, Ji Tianqing took out the black pouch and slowly extended it into the abyss. The golden divine bird's eyes changed. It was quickly accumulating anger and killing intent. Its emotions gradually became irritable. It started to accumulate violent power and was ready to kill Ji Tianqing. To it, the black pouch and the golden sun rock represented hatred and humiliation. However, something that the golden divine bird did not expect happened. Ji Tianqing flipped his palm, and a bright golden divine fire burned in his palm. The black pouch was immediately burned to ashes. Even the golden sun rock was burned into lava and was quickly refined by him. This scene stunned the golden divine bird. Deep confusion flashed through its eyes. It could see that this heaven-punishing guard was different from the others. He was very strange. Other than that, it could not see anything else. Therefore, it glared at Ji Tianqing fiercely and opened its beak to chirp a few times. The piercing sound waves reverberated in the main hall. Ji Tianqing did not understand the language of the divine bird, so he did not react. His eyes glowed with golden light as he stared at the abyss without blinking. He was observing the red light as he studied the sealing divine formation. Under his divine eyes, the secrets of the sealing divine formation were quickly exposed. This was a true god-level formation that contained the unique power of the Heaven Punisher race. Its structure was extremely complicated. After 100 breaths of time, Ji Tianqing understood the structure of the array formation. He formed a hand seal and waved his palms, shooting out dozens of golden lights into the grand formation. He began to break the seal. However, the golden divine bird did not understand what he was trying to do. Seeing Ji Tianqing cast a divine spell, it instinctively sensed danger and was instantly enraged. It suddenly spread its huge wings, and a golden light burst out from its body. Boom! A terrifying golden hurricane erupted from the abyss and soared into the sky. Even though the golden hurricane was blocked by the countless strands of red light. However, a portion of its power still passed through the sealing divine formation and attacked Ji Tianqing. Swish! 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 More than a dozen golden fragments stabbed toward Ji Tianqing like sharp blades, aiming for his vital points. Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He calmly raised his right palm and swept it toward the golden fragments. Bam! 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 A series of muffled sounds rang out as the golden fragments were instantly reduced to dust. Seeing this, the golden divine bird was stunned. Its eyes were filled with shock. It was even more certain that there was something wrong with this Heaven Punisher. Chirp! 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 The golden divine bird let out a low chirp as if questioning Ji Tianqing's identity and intentions. Ji Tianqing ignored it and focused on breaking the divine formation. Half an hour passed without him noticing. The golden divine bird had run out of patience and had stopped chirping. It remained alert and stared sharply at Ji Tianqing, waiting to see what would happen. Finally, Ji Tianqing broke the divine formation and ended his spell. Swish! 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 The thousands of red lights that sealed the entrance to the abyss melted like snow. The abyss had lost its shackles. The divine bird that had been imprisoned for many years finally saw the light of escape. Its body shrank back as it accumulated enough power to destroy heaven and earth. Its body emitted a dark golden glow. In the next moment, it shot out of the abyss like an arrow released from a bow. This charge was earth-shattering and unstoppable. Not to mention the roof of the main hall, even a mountain range would be smashed into powder by it. However, the golden divine bird had just charged out of the abyss and stuck its neck out. Its body was still in the abyss. Ji Tianqing, who was thousands of times smaller than it, casually raised his palm and pressed it down. Instantly, a bright golden palm pressed down from the sky and covered the entire entrance to the abyss. Bam! There was no doubt that the golden divine bird was slapped into the abyss by the giant golden palm and retreated back inside. A deafening sound reverberated in the palace, causing the entire palace to shake. Such an earth-shattering commotion caused the guards outside the hall to dodge repeatedly, and their expressions were filled with shock and fear. Oh my God! Is that divine bird crazy? Heh heh! Such a terrifying commotion, looks like that brat died without leaving even a trace. Sigh, poor guy. He can actually make the divine bird so violent. He's quite capable. A few guards communicated telepathically and discussed for a while. Then, peace was restored. They were already used to such situations. There was no way they would enter the palace to check out the situation. There was no need, and they did not have the guts. However, the scene in the palace was completely different from what the guards had imagined. Ji Tianqing stood calmly above the abyss, looking down at the divine bird in the abyss. The divine bird was already severely injured and weak. After being slapped back into the abyss by Ji Tianqing, its strength was even weaker. The golden glow on its body also dimmed. It curled up and raised its head unyieldingly. It glared at Ji Tianqing with rage. Chirp! Chirp chirp! Its sharp beak opened and closed as it questioned Ji Tianqing sternly. Ji Tianqing did not answer. Instead, his spirit left his body and returned to his body. Swoosh! There was a flash of light, and he returned to his original appearance. Seeing this, the golden divine bird was stunned. It looked at Ji Tianqing in shock. It could not understand how a black-armored guard of the Heaven Punisher race could suddenly transform into a handsome human in a white robe. That's right. The golden divine bird could recognize that Ji Tianqing was a human. In the ancient times, the golden divine bird had met an almighty of the human race and even received guidance from the almighty of the human race. Because of this, the golden divine bird gradually realized that the human youth before it had come to Gold Sun Palace with an ulterior motive. Most importantly, the human youth had reached the true immortal realm. His strength was unfathomable. It could not defeat him. Chapter 2565. The golden divine bird gradually calmed down and stopped trying to escape. Ji Tianqing then spoke calmly, the golden roc is a top divine bird from the ancient times. Its bloodline is extremely noble, second only to the divine dragon and the phoenix. Until now, there are very few golden rocs left. There might not even be 10 of them in all 3,000 worlds. And you are one of them. Ji Tianqing spoke calmly, as if he was talking to himself. He looked down at the golden roc in the abyss and said, if you can understand the human language, perhaps we can talk. The golden roc's golden eyes were filled with shock. It racked its brain for a long time before it had a clue. It used its divine consciousness to say, the human race. I've seen them before, so I can understand a little. It spoke the human language, but it was a little shaky and stuttering. That's good. Ji Tianqing nodded in satisfaction and asked, why are you imprisoned here? Tell me your background and story. At the mention of this, the golden rock's eyes flashed with hatred. It used its divine consciousness to reply, I have always been on Purple Cloud Planet and was good friends with Heavenly Venerable Zi Xiao. Together, we protected the people of Purple Cloud Planet. 50 years ago, the heaven-punishing race's fleet attacked Purple Cloud Planet. The Golden Rock told Ji Tianqing about its identity and experience. Ji Tianqing then knew that the Golden Rock was the guardian divine beast of Purple Cloud Planet. When Purple Cloud Planet was occupied by the heaven-punishing race's army, Heavenly Venerable Zi Xiao was besieged by the fleet and died. The Golden Rock was also severely injured but luckily survived. However, it was captured by the Southern Conquering Marshal and imprisoned here. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile as he muttered to himself, the Southern Conquering Marshal is not stupid. He actually recognized you as the ancient divine bird, the Golden Rock, and imprisoned you here. It seems that he wants to subdue you and make you his beast pet and mount. The Golden Rock nodded slightly and said, he did not kill me or save me, but he kept sending people to send me golden sunstones to maintain my strength and life. He wants to humiliate me, destroy my will, and force me to submit. Ji Tianqing shook his head and explained, no, it's not as troublesome as you think. Now that you're heavily injured and on the verge of death, it's very easy for him to subdue you. I only need to use the Heaven Punisher's soul-controlling secret technique to control your divine soul. However, after he took over Zixiao Star, he had more important things to do in person. He had no time to deal with you. A few years ago, he was severely injured and had to flee back to the Purple Cloud Star. All these years, he's been hiding in the Violet Heaven Cave in seclusion to recuperate, so he has no time to subdue you. However, he would come out of seclusion in another month. At that time, you will definitely be controlled by him and become a puppet of the Heaven Punisher race. The Golden Rock narrowed its eyes, revealing a look of resentment. It growled, if that's the case, I'd rather die. Ji Tianqing glanced at it and said with a faint smile, you didn't disgrace the integrity of the Golden Rock clan, but why do you only want to die? Have you never thought, that if you live, Marshal Nan will die? What, do you mean? The Golden Rock's eyes widened as it stared at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not answer. He continued to ask, Golden Rock, do you want revenge? Yes. The Golden Rock nodded without hesitation and said angrily, this is the only belief that keeps me alive. As long as I can take revenge and kill Marshal Nan, I won't hesitate even if I have to give up my life. Very good. Ji Tianqing nodded in satisfaction and said, then I'll give you a chance to take revenge. Let's work together. Before he could finish, the Golden Rock looked at him warily and asked, what do you want to do? Ji Tianqing smiled and said, just like you, I was persecuted by the Heaven Punisher race. Now, I'm here to take revenge. The Golden Rock finally understood. So, you pretended to be a Heaven Punisher race guard and sneaked into the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace to get close to me? You think too much. Ji Tianqing rolled his eyes at the Golden Rock and said calmly, you weren't part of my plan. It was just an accident that I met you. Of course, this accident increased the success rate of my plan. The Golden Rock was still hesitant and asked, why should I believe you? Maybe you're Marshal Nan's lackey and the Heaven Punisher race's accomplice. Ji Tianqing sneered disdainfully and said, Golden Rock, you don't have the right to choose. If you don't believe me, I'll restore the seal now and leave. I'll pretend you never saw me. As he spoke, Ji Tianqing raised his hand and was about to cast a spell to restore the sealing divine array. The Golden Rock immediately became anxious and shouted, stop. Let me think about it. Ji Tianqing was not moved at all. Golden light shot out from his palms as he started to cast a spell. The Golden Rock became even more anxious. After struggling for a while, it quickly shouted, "Stop. I agree with you." Ji Tianqing stopped and said indifferently, "That's a wise decision. Otherwise, I'd have to waste my time talking to you." The golden rock was depressed. It could not see through Ji Tianqing and was even more afraid of him. After a moment of silence, the golden rock tried to ask, "I can work with you, but you have to tell me, what do you plan to do?" Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Marshal Nan is hiding in the Purple Heaven Cave to heal. The Purple Heaven Cave is heavily guarded, so we can't kill our way in. Therefore, we can only wait patiently for a month. When the Myriad Kingdom God Conference starts, we'll take action. At that time, I'll create chaos outside and kill the Heaven Punisher experts. You'll kill your way out of the Gold Sun Palace and find a chance to sneak up on Marshal Nan. We'll work together." The Golden Rock was stunned. "This is your plan? Only the two of us dare to fight Marshal Nan and hundreds of Heaven Punisher race martial gods. I thought you had a foolproof plan and many helpers. Are you crazy?" Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "It's about quantity, not quantity. If you're afraid of death, then forget it." What a joke. The Golden Rock was furious. It roared in a deep voice, "The Golden Rock race has never had anyone who is afraid of death." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "If that's the case, then it's decided." The Golden Rock realized that it had been provoked, but it could not change its mind. Therefore, it could only remind Qin Haodong, "Your plan is too reckless. I'm severely injured now and can't use much combat strength. How can I kill Marshal Nan?" Ji Tianqing took out a large pile of dawn stones from his spatial ring and threw them in front of the Golden Rock. "You still have a month. Use these divine stones to heal your injuries. It doesn't matter how much you can recover. After all, you're not the main force to assassinate Marshal Nan." The Golden Rock was speechless again. It hesitated for a moment before accepting the pile of pitch-black dawn stones. "All right, since I'm going to die anyway, I'll believe you this time. Next, I'll go into seclusion to heal. I'll try my best to recover my injuries and strength." Chapter 2566. After comforting the Golden Rock, Ji Tianqing started to cast a spell to restore the ceiling formation. Xiao Sui *dream Xiao Sui *A. The Golden Rock understood his intention and did not try to stop him. After all, there would be other heaven-punishing guards coming to deliver the Golden Sun stones in the next month. The ceiling formation had to be restored to its original state so that no one would notice anything amiss. Of course, with Ji Tianqing's strength and methods, it was easy for him to do something to the ceiling formation. On the surface, there seemed to be nothing wrong with the ceiling divine formation. But in reality, Ji Tianqing told the Golden Rock how to open it. When the time was right, the Golden Rock could open the ceiling formation and rush out of the abyss. While he was casting the spell, the Golden Rock was still a little worried and asked two questions. "What is your name? Will you be hiding in the heaven-punishing divine palace for the next month?" Ji Tianqing did not hide anything and answered honestly, "Just call me Tianqing. I want to do something to the heaven-punishing divine palace so that it will be easier for me to take action in a month. Also, I want to make a trip to the Zero Mainland to create some chaos and distract the heaven-punishing race." The Golden Rock was relieved and nodded in agreement. "That's more like it. I thought you were really reckless." Ji Tianqing did not reply and silently cast a divine technique. 15 minutes later, the ceiling formation was restored to its original state. Countless strands of dark red light formed a huge net that enveloped the entrance to the abyss. Ji Tianqing was about to turn and leave when he suddenly thought of something and stopped. With his back facing the abyss, he asked calmly, "After this is done, are you willing to leave with me? I have studied the Seventh Forefather's divine technique. It will definitely help you increase your strength and break through to the Heaven God realm." The Golden Rock was stunned. After a moment of silence, it shook its head and said, if the plan succeeds and the Southern Expedition Marshal is killed, I will definitely stay on the Purple Cloud Star to protect the billions of people. 20,000 years ago, when I broke through to the true God realm, I decided that I would never ascend. What divine realm? What heaven God realm? They are all meaningless to me. Ji Tianqing did not say anything else. His body flashed with golden light, and he turned back into a heaven-punishing guard and walked toward the palace door. A moment later, he stepped through the door and left the hall safely. The few black-armored guards guarding outside the main hall suddenly revealed a face full of shock, and their eyes widened in disbelief. It wasn't until Ji Tianqing was far away and his figure disappeared under the palace wall in the distance that everyone came back to their senses. Hiss, this guy actually didn't die. Are our eyes playing tricks on us? How could he still be alive? That's not right. The commotion in the main hall earlier was so terrifying, he would have been blasted into smithereens. A few black-armored guards gasped in shock, discussing with each other in shock. No one could understand what was going on. For the next few days, the heaven-punishing divine palace was very peaceful. Ji Tianqing used the identity of a black-armored guard to move around the heaven-punishing divine palace, placing array formation materials everywhere. With his strength and methods, if there were no true divinity powerhouses monitoring him, he would absolutely not be able to see any flaws. After 10 days, Ji Tianqing had secretly planted more than 500 seeds in every corner of the heaven-punishing divine palace. The so-called seeds were either sacred weapons, dawn stones, or powerful talismans. In short, they were all materials that could be used to form arrays. At the crucial moment, they could explode with destructive power and destroy the heaven-punishing divine palace. Furthermore, Ji Tianqing had a clear understanding of the situation in the heaven-punishing divine palace. Inside and outside the heaven-punishing divine palace, there were more than 10,000 heaven-punishing divine palace guards and they were all martial sages. Furthermore, there were more than 700 martial gods. They were the personal guards of the captain of the guards, the captain of the ship, and Marshal Nanzheng. As for the true divinity realm powerhouse, there was only General Dian Xing. After all, after reaching the true divinity realm, one would be able to activate the laws of heaven and earth and fly up to the upper world. There were only a few true divinities who were willing to stay in the mortal world and conquer the various stars. As such, the defensive power of the heaven-punishing divine palace could be said to be extremely strong. If Ji Tianqing acted rashly, he would definitely be in a desperate situation and his life would be in danger. He had chosen to endure. He would wait until a month later, when the myriad countries' gods gathering opened, to find a way to kill Marshal Nanzheng. As long as he killed Marshal Nanzheng, the other martial gods and martial sages would not be a concern. On the 12th night, Ji Tianqing quietly left the heaven-punishing divine palace. He passed through the white sea of clouds and took out the Tianqing battleship. Bai Long was already bored from waiting. He immediately steered the battleship and headed straight for the Zero mainland. The heaven-punishing divine palace was above the sea of clouds and it was very far from the Zero mainland. Even with the speed of the Tianqing battleship, it would take 2 days to reach the Zero mainland. During the journey, Bai Long asked Ji Tianqing, "Master, Marshal Nanzheng is not in the heaven-punishing divine palace. Why don't you take this opportunity to destroy the entire heaven-punishing divine palace?" Ji Tianqing said earnestly, "If we destroy the heaven-punishing divine palace, the heaven-punishing divine palace can be rebuilt. If we kill a few hundred martial gods from the heaven-punishing divine palace, they will have more martial gods to reinforce them. Only by patiently waiting for the right time to kill Marshal Nanzheng can we disrupt the heaven-punishing divine palace's plans and prevent them from dominating the entire Purple Cloud galaxy. After all, there are countless martial gods, but only 1 in 10,000 true god experts." Bai Long nodded to indicate that he understood. Then, he asked in confusion, "Since that is the case, we can just hide in the heaven-punishing divine palace. Why do we still need to go to the Zero mainland?" Ji Tianqing explained calmly, Master has already investigated. There are as many as 2,000 martial gods stationed in the Purple Cloud Galaxy. 1/3 of them are guarding the heaven-punishing divine palace. The remaining martial gods are scattered across the various continents. The heaven-punishing divine palace has tight defenses. With Marshal Nanjing there, it will be very difficult to deal with. Thus, Master can only send you to the Zero Mainland and create as much chaos as possible to attract a large number of martial gods there. The fewer martial gods guarding the heaven-punishing divine palace, the higher the chances of Master assassinating Marshal Nanjing. Bai Long was stunned. Then, he smiled bitterly and said, this disciple understands. To put it bluntly, you want us to be cannon fodder and attract their firepower. Bai Long originally thought that Ji Tianqing would console him and encourage him. However, to his surprise, Ji Tianqing nodded expressionlessly and said, yes, it's good that you understand. PFFF. Bai Long almost vomited blood. He covered his chest with one hand and pretended to be heartbroken. He said in an aggrieved manner, Master, can't you at least say a few words of comfort? Even if it's just to trick me, it's fine. You are so straightforward. You have really hurt this disciple's heart. Ji Tianqing rolled his eyes at Bai Long and said unhappily, don't put on airs. How can you hide your little thoughts from Master? Actually, you have already guessed Master's plan. You are itching and looking forward to it. Isn't bringing 3 divine beasts to cause trouble what you are looking forward to the most? Don't deny it. Your heart is beating faster and your blood is flowing faster. You can't hold it in anymore. Bai Long did not feel embarrassed when his true thoughts were exposed. Instead, he laughed loudly and said, Aya. Master knows me best. That's right. This disciple has been itching for a long time and is ready to go all out. Chapter 2567. Bai Long was not a law-abiding person. He had never been one. Xiao Ruoyao, Xiao Ruoyao. To put it bluntly, this fellow was actually a warmonger. More than 1,000 years ago, Ji Tianqing had already seen through him. Ever since Bai Long had recovered to the martial god realm, he had not participated in any major battles. He had no place to use all kinds of schemes and tricks, so he had long been itching for a fight. He had even been despised by Qian Yu and Black Dragon for several years because he had not participated in the battle against the Southern Marshal. Bai Long remembered it in his heart and had always wanted to find an opportunity to prove himself. Otherwise, how could he convince the masses in the future? This time, he would go to the Zero Mainland to assassinate the Heaven Punisher and create chaos. This was the opportunity he had been dreaming of. 2 days passed quickly. The Tianqing battleship activated the invisibility divine array and remained invisible as it landed in the middle of the Zero Mainland. Before this, Ji Tianqing had done his research and had a basic understanding of the Zero Mainland. This was the most prosperous continent on the Purple Cloud Star. There were 5 divine kingdoms, more than 20 billion people, and dozens of races. After the Heaven Punisher had occupied the Purple Cloud Star, most of the captains and guards had been stationed on this continent. After several years of development, the Zero Mainland had already settled down. Now that the Heaven Punisher had control of the situation, no one dared to resist. The Tianqing battleship landed near the capital of the Fallen Star Divine Kingdom. Coincidentally, the Fallen Star Divine Kingdom was holding a grand ceremony. The Heaven Punisher had enslaved the Divine Kingdom for 6 years and wanted to select a group of experts from the slaves to train as loyal lackeys. The experts who passed the test would have their divine souls controlled by the Heaven Punisher and become loyal puppets. Moreover, these powerhouses were already very famous in the martial arts world and had a lot of commanding power. Once they became the lackeys of the Heaven Punisher, they would be able to better manage the people of the Divine Kingdom. A huge arena was built in the capital. Hundreds of thousands of commoners had gathered around the arena to watch the selection. A total of several hundred martial Dao experts participated in the selection. After many rounds of elimination, only 20 experts would remain. In addition, more than 30 martial God realm captains personally oversaw the arena. It was currently evening, and the blood-red sun was about to set. Ji Tianqing and Bai Long disguised themselves and sneaked into the capital city, rushing to the arena in the city. When they arrived at the bottom of the arena, the two of them observed for a moment. After figuring out the situation, the two of them acted decisively. In the arena, the two martial saints were fighting fiercely. Light and shadows filled the sky as they fought, causing countless people to cheer and cheer. More than 30 silver-armored captains were scattered around the arena, watching this scene with indifferent expressions. Right at this moment, a shocking sword light suddenly lit up in the crowd below the arena. Shwa! The dazzling golden sword over 10,000 feet in length slashed toward the dozen or so captains on the eastern side of the arena with the power to destroy all things. The sudden turn of events scared the hundreds of thousands of people out of their wits. The several hundred black-armored guards realized that something was amiss and wanted to intervene, but it was already too late. The dozen or so captains in the arena did not guard against anyone causing trouble. By the time they realized that danger was approaching, it was too late to avoid it. Kaboom! With a deafening explosion, the huge sword split the wide ring into two halves. 8 captains in silver armor were swept by the sword light. They let out shrill screams as their flesh and blood splattered all over the sky. The other captains in silver armor were also sent flying by the violent sword chi and fell into the ruins in a sorry state. The huge arena was destroyed on the spot. The two martial saints who were fighting fiercely were also killed by the sword chi. The powerful shock wave carried countless fragments of the sword chi and splashed in all directions. Instantly, the area within 100 miles was in chaos. The sky was also covered by the dazzling golden light. The hundreds of thousands of people who were watching screamed in horror and despair. They panicked and fled in all directions. Panic spread and the people were screaming. The 20 or so captains in silver armor who were lucky enough to survive locked onto the attacker and charged toward the white-robed young man with their swords and sabers. Shwa! 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 The captains swung their swords and sabers and unleashed their strongest power. They slashed out dark red light that covered the sky and earth. Thousands of light blades rained down like a torrential downpour, covering the area within a 100-mile radius. In this area, other than the white-robed young man, there were hundreds of thousands of people who could not escape in time. However, to the captains of the Heaven Punishers, these hundreds of thousands of people were slaves. Their lives were worse than pigs and dogs. As long as they could kill the white-robed young man, so what if they destroyed the entire capital city? Boom! 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 The red light blades that covered the sky and earth struck the white-robed young man. There was a deafening explosion. A terrifying dark red shock wave spread out in all directions. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed on the spot. They were all reduced to dust. However, the white-robed young man stood in his original spot calmly. He did not even take half a step back. Even though he had used his physical body to withstand the attacks of the captains, he was not injured at all. Oh my God! Is that guy a monster? Are our eyes playing tricks on us? How can he be safe and sound? It must be an illusion. He must have used an illusion technique. Everyone, don't panic. Surround this place and kill him together. No matter who he is, he will definitely die. The 28 captains of the silver-armored captains shouted one after another. Then, they spread out and formed a 200-mile circle around the white-robed young man. The white-robed young man was still calm. He raised his left hand expressionlessly and slapped out a few mountain-sized dragon and elephant shadows. He waved the black sword in his right hand and slashed out hundreds of dazzling golden sword radiances. Bam! 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 The dragon and elephant shadows descended from the sky and slammed into the 10 captains of the silver-armored captains. The area within a 100-mile radius was reduced to ruins. The 10 captains were killed on the spot. Their bodies were smashed into a rain of blood. Hundreds of dazzling golden sword radiances enveloped the bodies of the dozen captains like a rain of arrows. With a series of sizzling sounds, the burly bodies of the silver-armored captains were pierced and sliced into pieces by the sword radiances. Thus, 24 of the 28 captains died on the spot. They all died without a complete corpse. Their bodies were reduced to dust. The remaining 4 captains who were lucky enough to survive were also severely injured. They turned around and fled in horror. They could tell that the white-robed young man was not a martial god. He was an unfathomable and extremely powerful true god expert. Only General Jianxing and the Southern Expedition Marshal could deal with this person. Therefore, the 4 captains fled in different directions. They rushed into the sky in a panic. They wanted to escape from the fallen star's divine kingdom and report back to the heaven-punishing divine palace immediately. However, as soon as the 4 captains fled into the sky, they were intercepted and killed. The white-robed young man charged over with a sword. He smashed one of the captains with a punch and pierced another captain's chest with a sword. The other 2 captains were also stopped by a handsome young man with a demonic temperament. "Hey, where are you running to? Take my heaven-destroying earth-destroying fist." The devilish young man shouted angrily. He raised his fists and punched at the 2 captains. Chapter 2568. Bam! 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 2 deafening explosions rang out. The 2 captains in silver armor were smashed into pieces on the spot by the huge white dragon claw. Blood rained down from the sky. It was a ghastly sight under the setting sun. At this point, more than 30 captains on the battlefield were all dead. There were only a few thousand black-armored guards left. Many of them had died or were injured. They were in a dilemma. Everyone was filled with fear as they fled into the distance with horrified expressions. Should they flee from the capital city? They did not dare to do so. They were afraid that they would be punished. Should they charge forward and attack the white-robed young man and the strange young man? They did not dare to do so. Hence, they could only surround the ruins. They held their swords and sabers and were on guard. Taking advantage of this opportunity, hundreds of thousands of people fled the ruins in all directions. The place quieted down. Ji Tianqing and Bai Long flew into the sky and looked down at the people calmly. "I'll give you 1 day to call all the experts in the fallen star's holy kingdom here." Ji Tianqing's face was cold as he shouted sternly. His deep voice reverberated in the surroundings. The black-armored guards turned pale and were filled with fear. Bai Long sneered and shouted proudly, "Trash from the Heaven Punisher tribe. None of you can fight. I'll wait for you here for 1 day. Call all your men here so that I can kill all of you in one go. Remember, you only have 1 day. I won't wait for you after that." Like Ji Tianqing, Bai Long spoke in the Heaven Punisher tribe's language. The thousands of guards around the ruins heard him clearly. Immediately, everyone was filled with grief and indignation, shame and anger. However, they were weak and did not dare to act rashly. Otherwise, they would be killed by Bai Long's palm. After weighing the pros and cons, the black-armored guards chose to bear with it. Many guard captains took out their communication jade slips and sent out messages one after another. Soon, the news of what had happened in the capital city spread to all parts of the fallen star's holy kingdom. The captains of the various forces and cities rushed to the capital city as fast as they could. Half an hour later, The few experts guarding the capital city's imperial palace led a large group of guards to the battlefield in the capital city. There were a total of 6 captains in the martial god realm. All of them were at LV4 or LV5 of the martial god realm. They were the real rulers of the fallen star's divine nation. They had been stationed in the imperial palace and controlled several great empires in the divine nation. Normally, they wouldn't show up unless something major happened. This included the selection of leaders from the slaves, and they were not present. However, the news of the arena being destroyed and more than 30 captains being killed alarmed all of them. The 6 captains led 300 guards and rushed to the scene aggressively. Their killing intent soared to the sky. However, what awaited them was death. White Dragon had long been unable to restrain his murderous intent, and he was rubbing his fists. When everyone arrived at the scene, he did not give the other party a chance to speak at all. He waved his hand and used his ultimate technique. Wild Dragon goes to sea. The White Dragon waved its palms, releasing a golden light that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. It condensed into 9 huge golden dragons that charged towards the 6 captains and the 300 guards. Boom 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 boom. After a series of loud explosions, more than half of the 300 guards were killed. 4 of the 6 captains were killed in an instant. The other 2 were severely injured and fell into the ruins. Ji Tianqing was about to draw his sword when White Dragon beat him to it. He laughed and said, "Master, these nobodies are not worthy of your attention. Just leave them to me." As he spoke, White Dragon dashed out like an aurora and punched out a sky full of light shadows. With another series of muffled sounds, the 2 captains and over 100 guards were quickly turned into dregs by the White Dragon. The destructive shockwave swept through the entire city. The bustling city within a radius of 300 miles was turned into ruins. Smoke and dust rose everywhere. Even among the thousands of guards, a few hundred of them were killed on the spot. The survivors fled the ruins in a panic and hid a few hundred miles away. They did not dare to come any closer. White Dragon flew up into the sky and returned to Ji Tianqing's side. "Master, our methods are too violent and overbearing. Do you think the others will dare to come?" White Dragon was very worried. He and Ji Tianqing's methods were too powerful. What if they scared the other experts of the Heaven Punisher? If the other captains did not dare to come, wouldn't he and Ji Tianqing have waited for nothing? Ji Tianqing shook his head and said with certainty, "Don't worry. The other captains will definitely come. This is the Heaven Punisher's territory. Even if they know that they are going to die, they will not let the Heaven Punisher suffer such humiliation." White Dragon was immediately relieved. He said expectantly, "That's great. Previously, we were very passive in the 5 elements world. We were constantly invaded by the Heaven Punisher. It was really frustrating. Now that we are in the Heaven Punisher's territory, we can do whatever we want and kill them. This feels so good." Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, "It's better to enjoy together than to enjoy alone." Xian Yu, Black Dragon, and Lan Kuan are also very excited. They are all saying that they want to help you. White Dragon's expression immediately changed. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Master, that won't do." Chapter 2569. There were more than 40 Heaven Punisher experts who had rushed to the ruins of the capital city. They were all captains at the martial god realm. In addition, there were more than 40 battleships carrying more than 3,000 black-armored guards. The martial gods and the battleships had all arrived within a day. However, they had already contacted each other and discussed a strategy. No one acted alone. They waited for the others to arrive before joining forces and surrounding the ruins. Clang! 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 More than 40 battleships stopped in the sky around the ruins. They opened their side armor and revealed rows of cannons. The black cannons were aimed at Ji Tianqing and Bai Long, who were in the middle of the ruins. At the same time, more than 40 captains at the martial god realm held swords, sabers, and spears. They roared and charged. Kill them! Despicable commoners, how dare you resist? Go to hell! Those who oppose the Heaven Punisher tribe will be doomed. As they roared, more than 40 captains shone with red light. They slashed out light blades that covered the sky. Instantly, thousands of light blades covered the sky, covering the light of the scorching sun. Ji Tianqing and Bai Long were under the light blades. They were surrounded by a rain of arrows and there was nowhere for them to hide. However, the two of them did not plan to hide. Ji Tianqing's eyes turned cold. His body lit up with golden light and he instantly turned into a giant that was 100 feet tall. He ignored the attacks from the captains. He held the huge sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the two captains valiantly. Bang! 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 More than 100 dark red light blades hit him and there was a series of loud bangs. However, the light blades collapsed and he was not injured at all. He did not even lose a hair. However, the two giant swords that he had slashed out had locked onto the two captains. They could not escape. Boom! Crack! The two captains were killed on the spot. Their bodies exploded into dust and blood rained down. This scene shocked many of the captains. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Their eyes widened, revealing a deep sense of fear. Ji Tianqing did not stop. His body turned into a golden phantom and charged into the crowd. He was like a ferocious tiger in a flock of sheep. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed wildly. His aura was violent, his posture was domineering, and his moves were unparalleled and unstoppable. None of the captains could withstand even one of his attacks. Anyone who was touched by the sword of burial of heaven or touched by the sword light would be sent flying. In light cases, their limbs would be severed, while in heavy cases, their bodies would disintegrate and they would die on the spot. At this moment, Ji Tianqing was like a golden whirlwind. Everywhere he went, a rain of blood would be swept up. He was extremely fierce. On the other side, Bai Long's body was also emitting white light. Holding the domineering green dragon crescent blade, he ferociously charged into the crowd. Wherever he went, saber light splattered and divine power overflowed like a surging torrent. The captains whose auras were locked onto by him were often chopped into pieces by the green dragon crescent blade in less than 3 moves. Both the master and disciple were high-spirited and full of fighting spirit. More than 40 captains at the martial god realm were forced into a panic. They retreated in fear and trepidation. Just now, their morale was high, but now they were like stray dogs. They could only run and wail. The 40 or so warships around the ruins had originally formed an encirclement to prevent Ji Tianqing and Bai Long from escaping. The warships would not fire unless it was a critical moment. Many of the captains wanted to kill Ji Tianqing and Bai Long with their own hands and cut them into pieces. However, the situation in front of them was shocking and unbelievable. The 40 or so warships hesitated for a long time before finally making up their minds and firing. Boom! 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 In an instant, earth-shattering dark red pillars of light blasted toward the ruined battlefield with destructive power. Ji Tianqing was chasing after 2 captains, but he was hit by hundreds of pillars of light. Bang! 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 With muffled sounds, he was shaken until his entire body trembled and he retreated thousands of feet. Even so, he was not injured. His unparalleled defense was on full display. His body lit up with golden light, forming a huge vortex. The dark red pillars of light that blasted from all directions were swallowed by the golden vortex and quickly dissolved. He was not affected by the warship's bombardment at all and continued to chase after the 2 captains with his sword. On the other side, Bai Long was also hit by dozens of dark red pillars of light and flew back in a sorry state. However, he had also neutralized most of the power and was not injured. Damn it! I'll turn you into scrap metal immediately. Bai Long spat. He held the green dragon crescent blade with both hands and rushed out of the ruins in a flash. He arrived above a warship. Open! Bai Long roared like a bell. He held the green dragon crescent blade with both hands and slashed down with all his might. Suddenly, the blade emitted a bright golden light and condensed into a giant blade that was thousands of feet long. Boom! Crack! The giant golden blade slashed down fiercely. The thousands of feet long warship was instantly cut in half and countless pieces flew out. More than 100 black-armored heaven-punishing guards were immediately flung out and scattered in the sky. Whoosh! 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 Bai Long swung the green dragon crescent blade again and again. Soon, the black-armored guards were cut into pieces. After quickly finishing off one warship, he attacked another warship with his blade. The warship not far away saw Bai Long slash the warship in half with his blade and immediately turned around and fled in fright. Bai Long teleported and chased after it. He raised his blade and slashed down. Boom! Crack! The second warship was also cut in half. Then, the third, fourth, fifth, one warship after another was destroyed by the green dragon crescent blade. Bai Long was so excited that he did not care that his body was covered in the blood of the heaven punishers. He was like an evil god, surrounded by endless murderous intent. However, compared to Ji Tianqing, he was not terrifying and ferocious enough. His aura was also not domineering enough. Ji Tianqing, who was thousands of feet tall, was like an invincible god of war. He rampaged through the battlefield and crushed everything. Even if more than 30 captains surrounded him, they could not trap him, let alone injure him. On the contrary, every time he slashed out with his sword, he would take the life of a captain. Blood splattered everywhere. This battle, which had a great disparity in numbers, only lasted for 15 minutes before it ended. The heaven punishers could not believe the final result. They were shocked and terrified. More than 2,000 members of the heaven punisher race against 2 humans. In the end, all the heaven punishers were killed. More than 40 warships were also destroyed. However, Ji Tianqing and Bai Long were not injured. This was simply an unprecedented and shocking feat. When the light and the rain of blood dissipated, Ji Tianqing and Bai Long had already left. The two of them left the fallen star's divine nation as quickly as possible and headed for another divine nation. After all, they had killed 80% of the heaven punishers guarding the fallen star's divine nation. This earth-shattering battle with such a tragic result would soon alert the heaven-punishing divine palace. Moreover, the other divine nations on the Zero mainland would also receive the news. As long as the rulers of those divine nations were not stupid, they would definitely come up with a countermeasure and put in all their effort to defend themselves. Ji Tianqing wanted to create chaos before the news spread. Chapter 2570. Changhai Holy Kingdom was the closest to Fallen Star's Holy Kingdom. Bai Long steered the battleship and took 2 days to reach Changhai Holy Kingdom. By then, Changhai Holy Kingdom had already received the news from Fallen Star's Holy Kingdom. The capital city had been destroyed and turned into ruins. More than 80 martial god realm captains and close to 2,000 martial sage realm warriors had been killed. Such shocking news caused a huge commotion in the Changhai Divine Nation. Of course, it was not just Changhai Holy Kingdom. The other 2 holy kingdoms had also received the news. As such, the entire Zero mainland was in a state of panic. The captains and warriors of the Heaven Punisher tribe were all in danger. No one knew when those 2 mysterious outsider experts would descend upon them. When Tianqing's battleship reached holy capital of Changhai Holy Kingdom, more than 50 martial God realm captains had gathered in the city to discuss countermeasures. Holy Capital already had more than 1,000 martial Sage realm black armor guards. Now that they had mobilized more than 1,000 martial Sage realm black armor guards from the surrounding cities, the total number of black armor guards had reached 2,000. Even so, the captains were still afraid and trembling in fear. In the dazzling Holy Palace, the 50 captains had been discussing for half a day, but they were unable to come up with a perfect plan. Someone suggested that they should leave Shanghai Holy Kingdom and lie low for a while. This suggestion was immediately rejected by the captains. Zero Mainland and the entire Purple Cloud Star were the Heaven Punisher tribe's territory. How could they give up the entire Holy Kingdom just because of 2 foreign tribe elites? Wouldn't this be a laughingstock that would go down in history for 1,000 years? Most of the captains agreed that they could not retreat for the sake of the Heaven Punisher tribe's dignity and honor. They had to gather all the captains in Holy Capital and set up an inescapable trap inside and outside Holy Capital to wait for the other party to come and die. Everyone knew that Shanghai Holy Kingdom was the closest to Fallen Star's Holy Kingdom and would most likely become the next target of the foreign tribe elites. As such, after the captains had come up with a plan, they immediately carried it out. Other than the 4 most powerful captains guarding the Holy Palace, the rest of the captains rushed to the surroundings of Holy Capital to set up holy arrays and traps. After a day of work, the captains set up 12 arrays in Holy Capital. 6 of them were defensive arrays and 6 of them were extremely powerful holy arrays. Moreover, close to 2,000 black armored guards were also on standby, maintaining a state of alert at all times. However, after everyone spent the night in a tense atmosphere, the inside and outside of Fairy's capital remained calm. The expected attacks and massacres did not come. In the dead of night. The night sky was as dark as ink, shrouded by thick dark clouds. Everything was silent between heaven and earth. An ordinary-looking captain in silver armor was cruising outside the divine capital with a pitch-black saber at his waist. He circled the 1,000-foot-tall city wall and walked alone in the dark night. Not only did they have to patrol the city walls, but they also had to investigate the situation outside the city. As long as there was even the slightest movement, he would immediately send out a signal to warn the captains in the city. But just as he passed the corner of the wall and passed through the darkness, an invisible divine soul shockwave suddenly came from the darkness. Buzz! The captain was caught off guard and suffered a heavy blow to his soul. He only felt a rumble in his mind and was stunned on the spot. Before he could come back to his senses, a large hand reached out from the darkness and grabbed his neck. The silver-armored captain was lifted up. He struggled with all his might, wanting to resist and break free, but he was powerless. He tried his best, but he could not make a sound. Only gurgling sounds came from his throat. Invisible divine soul power surged out from the large hand and violently attacked his soul. Soon, the captain's soul was shattered, and his consciousness fell into eternal darkness. Then, Ji Tianqing walked out of the darkness and possessed the captain's body. In the blink of an eye, he had become the captain of the Heaven Punisher race. Not only that, but he also took away the captain's divine soul memories. After standing in the darkness for a while, he refined the captain's memories and obtained a lot of useful information. Captain Barker. That sounds terrible. Luckily, I only need this identity for one night. Ji Tianqing muttered softly and continued to travel in the darkness, patrolling the city walls. 2 hours later, he had patrolled the city walls. He knew the distribution of the soldiers on the city walls and the number of black armored guards like the back of his hand. Along the way, he also removed a dozen array nodes and destroyed 4 defensive arrays. No one noticed any of this. Only when the battle started and the divine arrays could not be activated would people realize that something was wrong. At midnight, Ji Tianqing took out his identity token and swaggered through the city gates into the divine capital. With Captain Barker's identity, he could do whatever he wanted in the divine capital. Other than the 4 strongest and most powerful captains, no one could restrain him. Thus, Ji Tianqing openly entered the divine palace and began his assassination journey. A silver-armored captain had just returned to his secret room to rest after a busy day of setting up the divine arrays. Whoosh! A figure suddenly appeared in the darkness in the corner of the secret room and stabbed out with a mysterious, pitch-black sword. In an instant, the captain's chest was pierced by the divine sword, and blood spurted out. On his chest, the scales with a few golden patterns were shattered, and the captain died on the spot. Even when the captain fell, he still could not die in peace. He did not know who the assassin was. 100 breaths later, Ji Tianqing used the law of space to directly pass through the thick wall, ignoring the protection of the divine arrays, and appeared in another secret room. A silver-armored captain sat cross-legged in the middle of the secret room, recuperating and quickly recovering his divine power. He sensed danger and suddenly opened his eyes, only to see a silver-armored captain in front of him. "Barker! What are you doing?" The captain furrowed his brows, looking at Ji Tianqing with both anger and confusion as he asked. However, he was answered by a pitch-black sword. Poof! The pitch-black, cold sword of burial of heaven instantly pierced through the captain's chest, and blood spurted out. Another captain died without even being able to call for help. Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and disappeared into the darkness. He went to find his next target. In the next hour, he constantly traveled through the divine palace, entering and exiting the various palaces like a ghost. One after another, the captains in the martial god realm died under his surprise attacks. A total of 12 captains were killed, but no one could resist. They did not even have time to send out a signal. At the same time, Bai Long was moving silently within the walls of the divine capital. Like Ji Tianqing, he was carrying out an assassination mission. The difference was that Ji Tianqing was assassinating the captains in the divine palace. Bai Long was assassinating the captains and commanders of the black armored guards within the city walls. As time passed, the lives of many heaven-seeking cultivators were taken away without anyone noticing. The night deepened, and the dark clouds in the sky became thicker. Chapter 2571. Soon, 4 hours had passed. Dawn finally arrived, and a ray of light appeared on the horizon. The captain and the heaven-punishing guards who were guarding the divine capital finally stopped worrying and being on guard for an entire night. Many people relaxed, thinking that the darkest night was over. Daytime was approaching, and the 2 mysterious foreign race experts would not choose to attack during the day. However, just when everyone thought that this was impossible, a great battle broke out in the divine palace. The massacre had finally arrived. When Ji Tianqing used the law of space and entered a secret room to assassinate one of the captains, he sensed that something was amiss. The captain sensed the danger in advance and did not hesitate to send out a warning signal. Even though Ji Tianqing had made his move in time and killed the captain with one move, Ji Tianqing was still able to do so. However, the dark red pillar of light flew into the sky, exploding with a deafening boom that shook the area within 100 miles. In an instant, the entire divine palace and more than half of the divine capital were alarmed. Countless captains and soldiers of the divine capital were tense as they rushed to the scene of the incident with their Kenshin weapons. A great battle had unavoidably broken out. 30 captains and more than 400 soldiers of the divine capital surrounded Ji Tianqing. Sword light and sword light filled the sky and the dazzling dark red pillar of light poured down like a flood. Ji Tianqing bathed in the red light, but he did not retreat at all. He roared angrily as his body bloomed with dazzling golden light, and he immediately transformed into a giant. He held the giant burial of heaven's sword that was more than 1,000 feet long and started a massacre in the divine palace. He was unstoppable. Like a golden hurricane that could destroy heaven and earth, it rampaged through the divine palace and swept through the various palaces. Anyone who was touched by the golden hurricane, regardless of whether they were captains or soldiers of the divine capital, was shredded into pieces. They died without a complete corpse. Even the numerous magnificent, lofty, and dignified palaces had transformed into disorderly ruins, and the ground was covered in rubble and crushed stones. In just a few moments, more than a dozen captains and more than 200 soldiers of the divine capital died tragically under the burial of Heaven's sword. The surviving captains panicked. They roared and roared, calling for other captains to come to their aid. However, more than half of the divine palace had been destroyed. The earth-shattering sounds of battle spread throughout half of the divine capital. However, there was no sign of any captain coming to their aid. Only a few hundred soldiers of the heaven-conquering army rushed over, looking panicked. Everyone finally realized that the captains, who had never shown up, had long been assassinated. Moreover, he had died without a sound, without leaving a trace. The more than 1,000 soldiers guarding the city walls were also ambushed by a few foreign race experts. A handsome and devilishly handsome young man was leading 3 divine beasts that were as huge as mountains on a killing spree on the city wall. The more than 1,000 soldiers of the Heaven expedition had already suffered heavy casualties. They could barely take care of themselves, so how could they still have the ability to help the divine palace? Fear and despair filled the hearts of many heaven-seeking experts, causing their morale to plummet. This earth-shattering great battle quickly entered its conclusion, becoming a great battle of pursuit. Ji Tianqing was alone. He held the burial of Heaven's sword and chased after the captains and more than 100 soldiers of the heaven-conquering army. The entire divine palace was destroyed and turned into ruins. As the battlefield shifted, the buildings and streets around the divine palace were also turned into ashes by the aftermath of the battle. Such a terrifying great battle had already woken up all the citizens in the city. Nearly 2 million citizens fled in panic, rushing toward the 4 city gates like a flood. Only a few puppets whose divine souls were controlled by the heaven-conquering army went against the flow and rushed toward the battlefield to help the heaven-conquering army. All the citizens in the city thought that the divine capital's city walls were high, the city gates were tightly shut, and there was a powerful defense divine array. Even if they fled to the city gates, they might not be able to escape the divine capital. In the end, they would definitely die in the chaotic battle. However, when they reached the city gates, they were pleasantly surprised to find that the city gates had already been destroyed. Even the towering city walls, which were hundreds of feet tall, had collapsed into ruins. One after another, gigantic and powerful divine beasts were wantonly killing the black-armored soldiers of the heaven-conquering army. The city guards and the heaven-conquering army had no time to care about themselves. They were all busy running for their lives. No one could stop the fleeing citizens. They crossed the ruined city walls like a flood and hurriedly fled the divine capital. An hour later, 90% of the citizens in the divine capital had fled. The entire divine capital had been destroyed and turned into ruins. Smoke and dust filled the sky. At this moment, the great battle finally ended. The dozens of captains guarding the divine capital had all been killed. 90% of the 2,000 heaven-conquering army soldiers had also been killed. Only a few took advantage of the chaos to escape. Ji Tianqing was very satisfied with this result. He brought Bai Long, Qian Yu, Lan Kuan, and Black Dragon onto the battleship and left at lightning speed. After leaving the divine capital of the Changhai divine nation, Tianqing's battleship headed north toward another divine nation. Along the way, the 3 divine beasts circulated their energy to recover and replenish their energy. In the great battle earlier, they had suffered some minor injuries and had used up a lot of their divine power. Only Ji Tianqing and Bai Long were unscathed. The divine power they had used up was quickly recovered. Bai Long steered the battleship and flew across the sky at lightning speed. At the same time, he sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing. "Master, I've basically figured out the situation. There are dozens of captains and 2,000 to 3,000 heaven-conquering army soldiers in the 4 divine nations of the Zero Mainland. As long as the Southern Expedition Marshal doesn't attack and we're not surrounded by hundreds of captains, we can kill the heaven-conquering army soldiers one by one. In my opinion, we just have to change places and we'll be able to kill the 4 divine nations in 10 days. Ji Tianqing sat in the secret chamber and circulated his energy to recuperate. He closed his eyes and replied, "It's not as simple as you think. We've taken the initiative in the previous 2 attacks. When we attacked suddenly, the heaven-conquering army soldiers guarding the falling star and Shanghai divine nations were killed before they could even resist. However, it won't be so easy after this." Bai Long didn't think much of it. He smiled confidently and said, "Master, you're too humble. With your true immortal realm strength, you can already fight the Southern Expedition Marshal head-on. On the Zero Mainland, who could stop you? Even if it's an army of thousands, you can still kill them all and sweep everything before you. Moreover, you've also grasped the law of space. It can be said that you can come and go without a trace. It's impossible to guard against. How about this? We don't have to go through so much trouble. Don't think about the myriad kingdom god assembly and just sweep through everything." Ji Tianqing explained calmly, "Killing the heaven-conquering army soldiers on the Zero Mainland is just to cause chaos and weaken the heaven-conquering army's core strength. We'll also restrain the heaven-conquering divine palace's experts. Our final goal isn't to kill these nobodies." Bai Long nodded and said, "I understand. Your goal is the Southern Expedition Marshal. Since it's not easy for you, we'll follow the original plan. First, we'll cause chaos on the Zero Mainland. We'll stay behind to restrain the heaven-conquering army. You can return to the heaven-conquering divine palace to assassinate the Southern Expedition Marshal." Chapter 2572. While Ji Tianqing and the others were on their way to the Flying Deity Nation, the news of the destruction of Deity's capital spread across the Zero Mainland. Coupled with the destruction of Fallen Star Deity Nation's capital city, the news of these 2 incidents shocked the world. All the heaven punishers on the mainland were filled with grief and indignation as they shared a common enemy. On the other hand, the people and martial artists of various races who had been enslaved by the heaven punishers were overjoyed. They saw the hope of regaining their freedom and worshipped the 2 mysterious powerhouses to the extreme. There were even various rumors and news spreading among the people. Some said that the 2 mysterious powerhouses were senior brothers of Heavenly Venerate Zi Shao and had been cultivating in another galaxy. After learning that Purple Cloud Planet had been invaded and Heavenly Venerate Zi Shao had fallen, the 2 powerhouses had rushed back to seek revenge. Some said that the 2 were the mysterious guardians of Purple Cloud Planet who had lived in seclusion for tens of thousands of years. The 2 guardians would not appear until it was time to change the world. Now that the calamity had descended and Purple Cloud Planet had fallen into darkness, the 2 guardians had started a massacre to revive the planet. Some said that the 2 powerhouses were already deities. They were originally the people of Purple Cloud Planet and had ascended to the upper world tens of thousands of years ago. After learning that Purple Cloud Planet was in trouble, the 2 deities had descended to save the people. In short, all sorts of rumors were spreading. They were strange and bizarre, making it difficult for people to tell the truth. 2 days later, Tianqing's battleship arrived at the Flying Deity Nation. The situation in the Flying Deity Nation was very tense. The dozens of martial gods guarding the various forces and cities had rushed to Deity's capital. 2,000 of the black-armored guards guarding the major cities were also sent to the divine capital to meet the enemy. There were more than 70 martial god realm ship captains and 3,000 martial sage realm soldiers gathered in the holy capital, which had a radius of 300 miles. Such a powerful force was enough to make any true god tremble in fear. Even so, the sky above Deity's capital was still gloomy and gloomy. In the depths of Deity's capital, in the most sacred and glorious Deity's palace, the atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. That was because everyone knew that those 2 mysterious experts of unknown origin possessed the power to destroy the heavens and earth. Even with dozens of captains and 3,000 guards, they did not have much chance of winning. At that moment, in the deity's palace conference hall, 74 captains in silver armor gathered in the main hall. Everyone stood in 3 rows, their postures very respectful. With me here, those 2 foreign race beasts will not dare to invade. It would be best if they didn't know what was good for them and dared to attack. Haven't we already set up an inescapable net? We can seal those 2 foreign race beasts here and chop them into pieces. General Gatai stood up, raised his arms, and shouted loudly. The captains in the main hall were stirred up and their fighting spirit was high. However, at this moment, a figure stepped into the main hall at an untimely time. Thump, 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 an ordinary-looking warrior in black armor stepped into the main hall with heavy steps. This person lowered his head and pressed on the pitch-black battle sword at his waist. He walked straight to the middle of the main hall. Dozens of captains looked at him and sized him up with a strange look. General Gutai's speech was interrupted. He frowned and looked coldly at the black-armored guard. He scolded in a deep voice, "Bastard! Can't you see that I'm having a discussion with the captains?" Seeing that General Gutai was angry, a silver-armored captain in the crowd quickly scolded, "You blind thing, get out of here. Do you want to die?" However, the black-armored guard turned a deaf ear to him and continued to walk toward General Gutai. This scene caused countless captains to frown, and they all began to reprimand. There were even 2 captains who wanted to use their capturing techniques to take down the black-armored guard. General Gutai's eyes flashed with anger, but he remained silent for the time being. He wanted to wait for the captains to deal with the blind guard before continuing his passionate speech. However, in the next moment, something unexpected happened. The seemingly ordinary black-armored guard walked to the front of the throne. Suddenly, he raised his head and revealed a mocking sneer. A group of people who are about to die still have the mood to boast. As he spoke, the black-armored guard suddenly pulled out the mysterious black sword at his waist. He slashed out a dazzling golden sword light that could split heaven and earth and attack General Gutai. Chapter 2573. When the black-armored guard drew his sword and unleashed the dazzling golden sword radiance, General Gutai realized that there was something wrong with this person. The Heaven Punishers cultivated a special power. Both their sword radiance and sword radiance were red in color. Even if they reached the martial god realm, their power would only turn from red to purple and then to black. What the hell was the dazzling golden sword radiance? It must be an alien race. However, when General Gutai realized this, it was already too late. Boom! With a deafening sound, he was struck by the dazzling golden sword radiance. He screamed and flew backward. The incomparably violent impact caused him to shatter the throne and pierce through the thick palace walls. He flew out for thousands of meters before coming to a stop. General Gutai fell into the ruins. He struggled for a while before getting up. He felt a chill all over his body. His chest and abdomen were cold. When he looked down, he realized that there was a huge wound below his chest. His internal organs and blood gushed out of the wound and stained the ruins. Through the hideous wound, one could see the broken bones inside. General Gutai was shocked and furious. He immediately roared, "Damn bastard! I'll tear you to pieces." However, his roar was drowned out by the loud sound coming from the meeting hall. Boom! The startled captains finally came to their senses. They realized that the black-armored guard was an alien race in disguise. They all drew their swords and sabers and were about to attack the black-armored guard. However, the black-armored guard had already used his ultimate skill and launched an attack first. Dragon Elephant Divine Fist. He waved his left fist and unleashed a huge shadow of a dragon elephant. It blasted toward the left side of the hall and enveloped dozens of captains. Life Rising Sword. He held the mysterious black sword in his right hand and unleashed a giant golden sword radiance that was thousands of feet long. It slashed toward the captains on the right side of the hull. A deafening sound exploded. In the next moment, dozens of captains were sent flying to the left and right. The earth-shattering power shattered the resplendent conference hall, turning it into a pile of rubble. The entire divine palace began to tremble, and dense cracks appeared on the ground. Such a commotion alerted countless patrolling guards, as well as the soldiers of the Heaven Conqueror who were lying in ambush inside and outside the divine palace. Thousands of soldiers dressed in black armor waved their weapons and roared as they charged toward the conference hall. However, a demonic young man rushed out from the divine palaces in all directions, accompanied by 3 divine beasts that were as huge as mountains. The young man in white dragged a huge long saber, and valiantly slashed out a monstrous saber light. The 3 divine beasts also displayed their strengths, releasing ice spears, black water, and light blades that blotted out the sky and covered the earth, attacking the black-armored guards. Boom 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 boom. A deafening explosion erupted, reverberating endlessly between heaven and earth. Violent shockwaves spread out, flattening dozens of palaces and affecting a radius of 100 miles. The entire divine palace was razed to the ground. Half of the divine capital was affected and turned into ruins. A great battle that shook the heavens and the earth began. General Gatai led more than 70 captains and madly besieged Ji Tianqing, his master, and the 3 divine beasts. More than 2,000 black-armored guards formed a huge encirclement outside the ruins, and joined forces to release destructive attacks. Colorful and dazzling magic lights covered the entire divine capital. The destructive shockwaves soon razed the divine capital to the ground. Hundreds of thousands of civilians who did not manage to escape in time were killed by the shockwaves. More than 1 million survivors fled the divine capital in panic, scattering in all directions. This battle lasted for a full hour before it ended. The divine capital was completely destroyed. General Gatai also died under the sword of the burial of heaven, turning into ashes. 95% of the captains were killed. Only 2 of them escaped in advance and luckily survived. More than 90% of the nearly 3,000 black-armored guards were also killed. The 200 or so survivors had long since scattered and disappeared without a trace. The flames of war and smoke were still lingering in the sky, but Ji Tianqing, his master, and the 3 divine beasts had already left quietly. Not long after, the news of the divine capital's destruction spread across the continent. The civilians of various races were in an uproar again. They were so shocked that their blood surged and they were wild with excitement. In particular, General Gatai and more than 70 captains guarding the divine capital could not escape the fate of being killed. This made everyone realize that the strength of the 2 mysterious powerhouses had reached an extremely terrifying level. They must have surpassed the martial god realm and reached the true god realm. That was a true deity. As a result, the various rumors that were already widely spread on the continent became even more reasonable. The civilians of various races had been enslaved by the Heaven Punishers for a few years, and they had accumulated a great amount of resentment. In the past, they were afraid of being suppressed and did not dare to resist. Now that the gods had come to save them and killed a large number of Heaven Punishers, their resentment exploded. The morale of the civilians of various races and the various martial Dao forces was high. They spontaneously joined forces and started to resist. Chapter 2574. Qianyu had just revealed a smug smile when the white dragon rolled its eyes at it. Pfft! Do I even need you to guess? Didn't I already tell you? Then, he cupped his fists at Ji Tianqing and said, Master, don't worry and return to the Deity Punisher Palace. Leave the rest to us. We'll definitely turn the Han Long divine nation upside down and shock the entire Zero mainland. To his surprise, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and interrupted him. Don't worry. There are still 20 days until the myriad kingdoms divine assembly. I still have to create a bigger storm. The Han Long divine nation already has dozens of martial gods. Adding the men sent by General Dian Xing, there should be more than 100 of them. There will be 3 to 5 generals among them who are at least 7th level martial gods. They won't really give up on the divine capital. They'll just hide in the dark and wait for us to show up before attacking. With your strength, you'll most likely die if you let your guard down and get surrounded by the deity punishers. Although White Dragon was very confident in his strength, he did not refute. However, he didn't refute Ji Tianqing's analysis and judgment. Master, you mean, the captains and more than 200 black-armored guards in the divine capital are bait left behind by the deity punishers? If that's the case, what should we do? Ji Tianqing nodded and pointed at the divine capital. He said, if they don't want to fight, we'll find a way to force them to fight. If they want to surround us, we'll set up an ambush here and catch them all in one fell swoop. White Dragon and Qian Yu thought for a moment and immediately understood what he meant. Soon, they sneaked into the divine capital and began their operation. After a night, they had set up 2 powerful divine arrays under the divine capital. One of them was the 1,000-sword execution formation and the other was the 9 development space shattering formation. Both of them were true god-level formations. After they were set up, Ji Tianqing began to assassinate the captains in the city while White Dragon went to kill the black-armored guards. Early in the morning, the sun rose slowly. The captains in the divine palace were quickly killed by Ji Tianqing. More than half of the black-armored guards guarding the city gates were also slaughtered by White Dragon and the 3 divine beasts. The commotion caused by the battle was so great that it woke up all the people in the divine capital. Countless people panicked and rushed toward the city gate, wanting to escape from the divine capital. White Dragon and the 3 divine beasts followed Ji Tianqing's instructions and opened the 4 city gates. In just 2 hours, over 1 million civilians had been evacuated. Only a few of the puppets whose souls had been controlled by the heaven punishers remained in the divine capital. They fearlessly surrounded Ji Tianqing, Bai Long, and the others. Without a doubt, these puppets were quickly killed. The battle soon stopped, and the chaotic divine capital gradually calmed down. More than half of the divine palace had been destroyed. The 4 city gates and several sections of the city wall had also been reduced to rubble. Ji Tianqing held the sword of burial of heaven and stood at the highest point of the divine palace. He looked down at the entire divine capital and waited silently. The White Dragon and the 4 divine beasts were hiding in various parts of the city, quietly accumulating power. About an hour later, a large black shadow appeared in the sky around the divine capital. There were at least 100 black battleships coming from all directions like rolling black clouds. The battleships were as fast as lightning. In a short while, they had surrounded the divine capital. All the battleships opened their side decks, revealing black cannons that were aimed at the city. Swoosh! 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 More than 100 captains in silver armor stepped out of the battleships and flew into the sky above the divine capital. There were 4 people in the lead. All of them wore dark golden armor and their auras were imposing and domineering. Without a doubt, these were 4 powerful generals. A total of 130 captains surrounded Ji Tianqing under the lead of the 4 generals. All of them had smug, ferocious smiles on their faces. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent. The 4 generals in the lead sized up Ji Tianqing and laughed smugly. There are rumors all over the continent that you are some kind of deity who has come down to earth. I didn't expect you to be so weak. Ha ha ha. You little b*****. Our efforts were not in vain. You are finally here. Hee hee. You lowly worm. You will not be able to escape this time. You are going to die. You little b*****. You have killed so many of my people. Today, I will cut you into 1,000 pieces. The four generals were smug as if victory was within their grasp. The truth was just as Ji Tianqing had guessed. This was a trap that the elites had set up. They had pretended to abandon the city and escape, leaving only a few captains behind to act as bait. When Ji Tianqing and the rest of the people entered the divine capital, they had already gathered all the captains and warriors to surround the divine capital. This way, they would have the upper hand and would be able to fight Ji Tianqing and the rest of the people. The four generals and the captains were full of confidence as they fantasized about how they would torture and kill Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing looked calm. He glanced at the crowd and said regretfully, "You have planned for so long and you have only gathered so few people. This is so disappointing." The number of Einherjar realm elites was similar to what he had estimated. The people in the lead were also just four generals. There was not even a single true God realm powerhouse. This indeed made Ji Tianqing feel somewhat regretful. Initially, he had thought that General Dian Xing would come personally and he would be able to use this opportunity to kill him. When the four generals saw his reaction, they frowned and their hearts skipped a beat. This little b** start has obviously fallen into our trap and is surrounded by us. How can he be so calm? No. We have so many people and we have the support of the fleet. There is no reason for him to not be afraid. How can he be so arrogant? This guy must be bluffing. He must be terrified but he doesn't dare to show it. That is why he is acting so arrogant. Similar thoughts flashed through the minds of the four generals. Ji Tianqing said coldly, "If you have any other tricks up your sleeves, why don't you use them all at once? If not, you won't have the chance." As he spoke, his body emitted dazzling golden light and he turned into a giant that was 100 feet tall. Even the sword of burial of heaven in his hand had turned into a giant sword that was 100 feet long. It shone with a cold black light. Endless murderous intent and violent aura exploded from his body and swept across the entire fairy's capital. The four generals panicked as they were suppressed by his aura. They were terrified and uneasy. "Quick! Kill him! Let's attack together and tear him into pieces. Don't let him escape." Subconsciously, the four generals let out a furious roar and pulled out their swords, spears, swords, and halberds. They slashed out sharp red light blades that filled the sky and attacked Ji Tianqing together. The expressions of the 100 or so captains changed drastically as well. They hurriedly brandished their swords and unleashed their ultimate killing moves to attack Ji Tianqing. Thousands of red light blades, like a flood that blotted out the sky, instantly engulfed Ji Tianqing. No one could withstand the combined attack of 100 Einherjar realm elites. Not even a true god. Chapter 2575. They watched as Ji Tianqing was drowned by the overwhelming torrent. Even if he did not die, he would be severely injured. However, at this critical moment, an unbelievable scene occurred. Swoosh! His figure suddenly became blurry, leaving only an afterimage. His real body was nowhere to be found. The sky was filled with saber light and sword shadows slashed down, shattering the afterimage into pieces. Then, endless red light blades slashed into the divine palace. Rumble! The entire divine palace collapsed on the spot, turning into ruins. Smoke and dust flew up into the sky. Not only the divine palace, but the ground within a radius of 100 miles also collapsed, revealing a huge pit. Half of the divine capital was destroyed. Tens of thousands of houses and palaces were turned into debris. The combined attack of so many experts was so destructive. However, the four generals and more than 100 captains all frowned and looked around sharply. Whether in the sky or in the ruins, there was no trace of Ji Tianqing. Many captains were puzzled and started whispering to each other. "Strange, where did that little bastard go? Could it be that he was killed by us in an instant and turned into ashes? Isn't he a true god expert? How could he be so weak and be killed by us in one move? So what if he's a true god? With so many of us working together, we can even kill a true god, right? Just as everyone was discussing, a huge golden figure appeared out of thin air outside the encirclement. Sword sweeping all directions. The golden giant roared with a thunderous voice. He held the huge sword with both hands and slashed down. Suddenly, more than 100 golden swords bloomed and shrouded the figures of more than 30 captains. Bam! 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 With a series of muffled explosions, more than 30 captains exploded on the spot. Their bodies turned into a rain of blood. The 4 generals and more than 100 captains suddenly widened their eyes, revealing an extremely horrified expression. Oh my God! How could he be safe and sound and escape from the encirclement? This is impossible. More than 100 of us worked together and destroyed the area he was in. Even the alternate space was shattered. How could he teleport and escape? What method did he use? Is he really only a true god? These thoughts flashed through everyone's minds at the same time. The 4 generals were the first to come back to their senses. They hurriedly waved their palms and shot out a red light that soared into the sky, forming a few patterns. That was the signal to attack. In the sky 100 miles away, more than 100 battleships saw the attack signal and activated their formations without hesitation, firing their divine cannons. Boom 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 boom. All the battleships simultaneously blasted out hundreds of dark red light pillars, which instantly pierced through the sky and headed straight for Tianqing. More than 10,000 light pillars covered the sky for 300 miles, covering the entire divine capital. Tianqing's aura had been locked onto by the divine cannon. Logically speaking, there was no way for him to escape. As long as he was struck by over 10,000 light pillars, even if he was a peak true god, he would die without a doubt. However, a scene that caused everyone to be even more shocked appeared. When more than 10,000 light pillars were about to drown him, his figure blurred again and disappeared into thin air. Boom 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 boom. In the next moment, the pillars of light collided with each other, causing a loud bang that shook the clouds to reverberate endlessly between heaven and earth. Tianqing's figure was destroyed, but his real body was nowhere to be found. Destructive shockwaves spread out in all directions and engulfed the entire divine capital. In the blink of an eye, the entire divine capital had been razed to the ground, causing smoke and dust to rise into the air. 4 generals and more than 100 captains were also sent flying by the shockwaves and scattered in all directions. Before they could recover from their shock, a golden light suddenly shot up into the sky from the ruins. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The dazzling golden light shot up into the sky and immediately formed a light shield that covered the entire sky. It was like a giant bowl with a radius of 300 miles that was placed upside down on the ruins of divine capital, suppressing all the battleships and experts of the Heaven Punisher. The golden light shield was very thick, like an indestructible fortress. After the array was activated, it released a terrifying force that suppressed the entire space. The Heaven Punisher battleships that were floating in the sky suddenly fell down like dumplings and landed heavily on the ruins. More than 100 captains and 4 generals were also suppressed in the ruins, struggling with great difficulty. This sudden turn of events caused many experts to be inexplicably shocked. A bad premonition arose in their hearts. D****. That B***** has set up a divine array in the city. He is too despicable. We were supposed to ambush him, but now we have fallen into his trap. Everyone, don't panic. This is only a sealing array. As long as we remain calm, we will be able to break it. The 4 generals calmed down and shouted loudly, stabilizing the morale of the army. However, what happened next caused them to break down completely. Tens of thousands of golden light swords formed in a golden light shield that covered the entire sky, exuding a sharp and violent energy fluctuation. Swoosh! 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 More than 90,000 golden light swords were arranged in a mysterious way and started to fly around, killing the Heaven Punisher battleships and experts. Instantly, the area within a radius of 300 miles was covered by the golden light. The sword radiance flashed and intertwined with each other, cutting the sky into pieces and crushing the ground into powder. Every battleship would be slashed by more than 1,000 sword radiances within a breath's time. Every martial god realm captain was engulfed by the golden sword radiances and suffered endless attacks. Bam! 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 The Heaven Punisher battleships were slashed into pieces by the sword radiances and exploded. There were dozens to hundreds of fully armed black armor guards in each battleship. When the battleships were slashed into pieces by the sword radiances, most of the black armor guards were not spared and were crushed into pieces. A few survivors fell from the sky, but before they could land on the ground, they were crushed into pieces by the sword radiances. Not only were the battleships destroyed, but even the martial god realm captains could not withstand the sword radiances. Bam! 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 In just 10 breaths, more than 30 captains had been crushed into pieces. The remaining captains were also covered in wounds and broken limbs, but they were still holding on in desperation. Even the 4 generals were in a miserable state. Their flesh and bones were torn apart by the sword radiances and they were covered in blood. Everyone was terrified. Their hearts were filled with fear and despair. They roared and charged toward the golden light barrier, trying to escape the divine capital. However, Bai Long and the 3 divine beasts charged out. They rampaged in the sky and started a massacre. Ji Tianqing's figure was also flickering. He killed one captain after another with his sword. The world was in chaos. Bright and dazzling golden light mixed with the blood that filled the sky, outlining a strange scene. In just 15 minutes, the god-killing sword formation stopped working. All the battleships, captains, and black armor guards were killed. None of them were spared. Only 3 generals were still alive. However, their bodies were broken and they were on the verge of death. Chapter 2576. The 3 generals stood in the sky, blood gushing out of their bodies. They looked down at the ground below, their eyes filled with despair. The once glorious divine capital had long since disappeared. It had turned into a huge crater. The pit was filled with dust and gravel. Silver armor fragments and black warship wreckage were scattered around. Everything was over. Their meticulously planned scheme had been crushed just like that. 130 warships, their captains, and more than 3,000 soldiers of the heavenly expedition had been reduced to ashes. Such a heavy blow had never been dealt before. The facts had proven that the white-robed foreign race expert was unbelievably powerful. Other than a true god, no one could subdue him. Even if more than 100 martial gods worked together, it would be useless. The 3 generals knew that they were going to die, so they gave up on the idea of escaping. They used their last bit of divine power to self-destruct. However, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and activated the second array. 9 development space shattering array. Swoosh! White light surged out of the deep pit that had a radius of 200 miles, forming a huge tornado that engulfed the 3 generals. That white tornado was condensed from the power of space, and it could cut and destroy everything. The 3 generals were instantly killed. Their bodies disintegrated into millions of dust particles and dissipated into the air. However, the tornado did not dissipate. It continued to destroy everything in the ruins. The armor fragments of the captains and the wreckage of the warships were all reduced to dust by the tornado. Ji Tianqing did not take another look. He left with White Dragon and the 3 divine beasts. When they stepped onto Tianqing's warship and left, the tornado had already wiped out all traces and gradually dissipated. The divine capital of the Han Long divine nation was destroyed. Not even the broken walls were left. Only a huge pit was left. More than 100 captains and thousands of soldiers of the heavenly expedition, including the 4 generals, were all killed. The news spread like wildfire and quickly spread across the Zero mainland. The surviving experts of the heavenly expedition in the 4 divine nations had completely collapsed. They were all panicking. No one knew when the butcher's knife would fall on their heads. The civilians of the major races and forces, on the other hand, were overjoyed and excited. 80% of the Heaven Punisher experts guarding the 4 divine kingdoms had been killed. The remaining experts of the Heaven's Path had also become birds that were startled by the mere twang of a bow. They were already unable to take care of themselves. The people of various countries rose up in revolt, erupting with an even more intense wave of resistance. They swore to break free from the Heaven Punisher's slavery and regain their freedom. For a time, the flames of war broke out everywhere on the Zero continent, setting the prairie ablaze. Even though the heaven-punishing divine palace had received the news and sent out a large number of heaven-punishing warriors led by hundreds of captains, they did not go to suppress the chaos in the various countries. The captains and soldiers of the heaven expedition were ordered to search for the traces of the mysterious elite. They swore to find him. After all, the 2 mysterious powerhouses had gone missing after the battle in the Han Long divine kingdom. 5 whole days passed, and the mysterious expert did not show his face again. At the same time, White Dragon, Blue Kuan, Xian Yu, and Black Dragon had already left the Zero mainland. Under Ji Tianqing's instructions, they crossed the incomparably dangerous Sky Sea and arrived at another continent. Next, they would carry out an assassination on that continent. They could weaken the core strength of the Heaven Punisher and restrain the experts of the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. Ji Tianqing had also returned to the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. He disguised himself as a black armored guard and infiltrated the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace to secretly gather information. The current Heaven Punisher Divine Palace was not as heavily guarded as before. An invisible heavy atmosphere pervaded the palace. A layer of haze shrouded the hearts of all the experts of the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. They were filled with grief, indignation, and helplessness. General Jian Xing was also busy and did not have time to care about the defenses of the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace. He had even put aside the matter of the 10,000 countries God Conference. In order to search for the 2 foreign race experts, he had sent out more than 100 captains and more than 1,000 Heaven Punisher Divine Palace soldiers. The Heaven Punisher Divine Palace's defenses had been reduced by half. However, the most infuriating thing was that no matter how General Jian Xing deployed his troops, he could not find any trace of the mysterious expert. The atmosphere in the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace was stifling. Even the experts of various races participating in the 10,000 countries God Conference could feel that something was amiss. More than 150 experts from various great worlds had been kneeling outside the conference hall with their hands raised high above their heads. For half a month, no one dared to leave their original spot or make a ruckus. However, everyone saw the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace's experts entering and leaving with anxious and gloomy expressions. Naturally, they knew that something big had happened. Although everyone did not show it on their faces, they were secretly discussing this matter. Doesn't everyone feel that the atmosphere in the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace is becoming more and more strange? That's right. Those captains and guards used to be so arrogant and full of themselves. Now, they are all dejected and depressed. I don't know if anyone has noticed that the number of people entering and leaving the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace has decreased by half over the past 10 days. Humph. Looking at the unlucky faces of those bastards, I know that they are in trouble. Yesterday, I heard from a few guards that General Jian Xing was furious and sent out another 20 captains to look for something. The Purple Cloud planet is the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace's territory. What has happened to make the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace so nervous? Could it be that the people of the Purple Cloud planet have joined forces to fight back against the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace's enslavement? The martial gods from different worlds carefully communicated with one another. God Lord Silvermoon expressionlessly kneeled on the ground, her hands holding a treasure box above her head. She could hear the discussions of the people around her. Even though she only understood part of it. She could also sense that the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace was in trouble. When she thought of this, she couldn't help but think of that white figure, that arrogant and conceited human youth. That detestable fellow. Ever since I recognized him while he was pretending to be a guard, he hasn't shown his face again. Half a month has passed, and I wonder what he's doing. Could the trouble the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace have encountered have something to do with him? God Lord Silvermoon's thoughts were running wild as she speculated. At this moment, a group of black-armored Heaven Punisher guards walked over from the distance. The martial gods immediately went on guard and shut their mouths to maintain their silence. God Lord Silvermoon heard the footsteps and instinctively turned to look. Her gaze swept across the guards and landed on the last black-armored guard. Suddenly, a glint flashed in her eyes. It's him. He's finally appeared again. This thought flashed through God Lord Silvermoon's mind. At the same time, the black-armored guard raised his head and calmly looked at her. As their eyes met, God Lord Silvermoon could clearly sense the encouragement in his eyes. God Lord Silvermoon's heart warmed, and she couldn't help but send a message, "Hey! Where have you been for the last half a month?" Chapter 2577. Only she and the guard could hear God Lord Silvermoon's voice transmission. The black-armored guard expressionlessly walked across the plaza toward the conference hall. At the same time, he messaged in the language of the moon spirit race, "I'm not called Hey. I'm Tianqing." Humph. God Lord Silvermoon angrily glared at him and messaged back, "You're still fussing about this at a time like this? Let me ask you, what in the world happened to the Heaven Punishing race to make them so nervous? And where have you been all this time? Does the Heaven Punishing race matter have anything to do with you?" Ji Tianqing was forced to admit that God Lord Silvermoon's intuition and judgment were very accurate. He had no intention of hiding the truth, so he straightforwardly said, "I personally went to the Zero Continent and killed 80% of the Heaven Punishing experts guarding the 4 divine kingdoms." What? God Lord Silvermoon's body trembled, her eyes going so wide that they almost fell out of their sockets. But she quickly came back to her senses and restrained her shock. She messaged, "Scoundrel, will you die if you don't brag? What's going on? Hurry and speak." As the two conversed, Ji Tianqing the guard passed through the crowd and onto the steps. He pretended not to hear God Lord Silvermoon's question, nor did he explain. God Lord Silvermoon stared at his back as he entered the conference hall, but she still did not get an answer, causing her to become rather angry. Humph. That damn scoundrel. Not a word of truth comes out of his mouth. How could I have been so obsessed that I believed his words? God Lord Silvermoon silently cursed, both regretful and angry. But once she calmed down, she couldn't help but think back to Ji Tianqing's words. She repeated those words over and over in her mind several times. After thinking for a few moments, she hesitated, thinking to herself, that scoundrel's tone and eyes didn't seem like he was bragging at all. It seemed like he was telling the truth. Could he really be telling the truth? Did he really go to the Zero Continent and slaughter countless heaven-punishing experts? How could that be? The Zero Continent is the territory of the heaven-punishing race and has as many experts as the clouds. But his origins are mysterious, his strength is formidable, and he has all sorts of divine abilities and methods. Perhaps it really is possible. The more God Lord Silvermoon thought about it, the more confused he became. He didn't dare to believe it, but he was also somewhat expectant. She was forced to the point where her heart itched unbearably. She couldn't wait to rush into the great council hall, grab Ji Tianqing, and interrogate him face to face. However, reason prevailed over impulse. She gradually suppressed her complicated thoughts and continued to kneel in the square, waiting silently. About a quarter of an hour later, several black-armored guards left the main hall, and strode over the stairs. Upon seeing Ji Tianqing come out, God Lord Silvermoon hastily raised his head, a look of anticipation in his eyes. Without waiting for Ji Tianqing to walk in, she secretly asked, "Tianqing, is what you said just now true? How many heaven punishers have you killed? How did he do it?" Ji Tianqing walked through the crowd without looking sideways. When he walked past her, he said indifferently, "I just received the news that the Southern Expedition Marshal will be back soon. You have to get ready." "Me? Get ready?" God Lord Silvermoon froze for a moment, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Hey, what are you planning? What do I need to get ready for?" By the time she came back to her senses and messaged Ji Tianqing again, Ji Tianqing was long gone. God Lord Silvermoon's brows creased as she clenched her teeth in anger. In the moon spirit world, she was a peerlessly noble God Lord, an omniscient and omnipotent God. But in front of Ji Tianqing, she felt like her intelligence had been completely suppressed, and even her temper had become much more explosive. But it was precisely this that made her even more unconvinced, and she vowed to see Ji Tianqing's true face. Night fell. The resplendent heaven-punishing divine palace was shrouded in darkness, its luster much dimmer. The divine palace was extremely quiet, with only a few places lit by lanterns. The number of patrolling guards had decreased by half, making the divine palace even more desolate. Deep within the divine palace, in a simple and elegant study, General Jian Xing stood in front of the window with his arms crossed in front of his chest. He was staring at the sea of clouds outside the window, waiting quietly. He was the only one in the study, and it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. At this moment, a black silhouette shot out of the clouds and into the study. Whoosh! The blurry silhouette immediately became solid, revealing a tall and dignified heaven-punishing man. This man was pitch black and had no scales on his chest, but his body exuded powerful ripples of energy. Only true God heaven-punishing experts could reconstruct their divine bodies and hide the scales on their chests within their bodies. In this way, they would have one less fatal weakness. General Pointing Star was startled out of his stupor and turned to the middle-aged man. Upon seeing this man's face, General Pointing Star hurriedly bowed, a look of respect on his face. "Your subordinate pays respects to the Grand Marshal." There was no doubt that this middle-aged man was the Southern conquering marshal. After so many years, his injuries had long since healed, and his strength had also returned to peak condition. He coldly stared at General Pointing Star and sternly said, "My race has occupied Violet Firmament Star for several years, and the situation has long since stabilized. Why did such a thing happen and turn the Zero Mainland upside down?" Clearly, Marshal Nan Zhennan had ended his seclusion early and returned to the heaven-punishing divine palace because of the Zero Mainland. General Pointing Star had already expected Marshal Nan Zhennan to be furious. Bearing the anger and pressure of the South conquering general, he hurriedly bowed and said in fear and trepidation, "It's my fault. I didn't manage them well enough. I let the two non-humankind beings wander around and create chaos. Your subordinate is incompetent, please punish me." Marshal Nan Zhennan said expressionlessly, "The four divine nations, more than 300 captains, and more than 10,000 elite warriors were all killed. In the end, you did not even know who the two foreign race experts were. Pointing Star, if Ben Shui does not kill you, how will he answer to the warriors who died?" The lowly people of the Zero Mainland rose up and rebelled, causing the entire continent to fall into chaos. If Ben Shui does not kill you, how will he convince the people and lead the entire star field in the future? Hearing these words, General Jian Xing's body trembled, and he fell to his knees with a plop. Marshal, please calm down. It's not that your subordinate is lazy, but the strength of the two foreign race experts is beyond imagination. During the battle at Han Long's divine capital, your subordinate planned and mobilized 130 captains and 4 generals to besiege the two foreign race experts in the ruins. However, no one expected the two foreign race experts to kill the 4 generals and all the captains, and destroy all the warships. The leading white-robed youth was unharmed, and only the youth was lightly injured. Marshal, those are 2 true God realm powerhouses. Only you personally taking action can kill them. Hearing this, the southern conquering marshal said with a cold expression, Jian Xing, I'll spare your life for now. If you do not kill the 2 foreign race experts within a month, Ben Shuai will execute you in front of everyone. Chapter 2578. Hearing Marshal Nan's words, General Jian Xing hurriedly kowtowed and thanked him as if he had been pardoned. After crawling to his feet, he asked carefully, Marshal, I have sent out 150 captains to search for them all over the continent. What do you think we should do next? Marshal Nan frowned again and asked in a low voice, how many captains and guards are left in the God Palace? General Jian Xing paused for a moment before replying, only 200 captains and 1,000 elite guards. Marshal Nan cursed angrily, idiot. How could you send out half of the captains and guards guarding the God Palace? The defense of the God Palace is so weak. If those 2 alien powerhouses came to sneak attack, how could they resist? If Ben Shuai hadn't come back in time, wouldn't the God Palace have been razed to the ground? General Jian Xing had never thought of this. He exclaimed in disbelief, Marshal, how is this possible? No matter how daring those 2 alien bastards are, they wouldn't dare to come to the God Palace. Marshal Nan scolded angrily, they've already killed so many captains and guards and disturbed the entire Zero continent. Why wouldn't they dare? General Jian Xing's face stiffened. He explained embarrassedly, Marshal, you're guarding the God Palace. If those 2 alien bastards dare to invade, wouldn't they be walking right into a trap? This flattery, which wasn't too subtle, made Marshal Nan's anger dissipate a lot. He waved his hand with a dark face and said, no need to talk nonsense. Send the order immediately to strengthen the patrol and defense. In addition, the Myriad Kingdoms God Conference will be held tomorrow. General Jian Xing frowned and said tentatively, Marshal, please forgive me for acting on my own initiative and holding this Myriad Kingdoms God Conference. I did this to show the powerful force of our race and highlight your divine majesty. However, the God Conference is scheduled to be held half a month later. Isn't it too hasty to hold it half a month earlier? Marshal Nan stared at him and said in a dignified tone, it's just a claptrap. What's the point? Can't you tell what's more important in the face of danger? General Jian Xing was scolded badly. He hurriedly nodded and apologized. However, he had some doubts in his heart. He thought to himself, even if those 2 alien race experts are very powerful, killing a large number of captains and guards, and disrupting the Zero mainland, they are still very powerful. However, wasn't the Grand Marshal's reaction a little too cautious? Not only had he left the Purple Heaven Cave in advance, but he had also played along with the Myriad Kingdoms God Assembly. He was also wary of those 2 experts. How could this be? Could it be that, the Grand Marshal doesn't have the confidence to kill those 2 foreign race experts? At the thought of this, General Jian Xing's heart skipped a beat, and he felt a chill down his spine. He had a bad feeling in the depths of his soul. We have just occupied the Purple Cloud Star, and our soldiers have suffered heavy casualties. We need to rest and recuperate. I hope that the Grand Marshal will be able to resolve this matter smoothly. Don't let anything go wrong. General Pointing Star prayed silently in his heart. Then, he calmed himself down and bid farewell to Marshal Jinan. After walking out of the study, he went to the meeting hall and gathered many captains to pass on the order of the Southern Expedition Marshal. Standing at the door of the meeting hall, he glanced outside the hall. On the square below the stairs, more than 100 alien race experts were still kneeling on the ground, holding the treasure box above their heads with both hands. Seeing this, General Pointing Star felt slightly comforted. He thought to himself, Our race can occupy hundreds of worlds. We can definitely rule the entire Purple Cloud Star Zone. So what if they are just two true God stage alien race experts? Then, he turned and stepped into the meeting hall. Bathed in the dim light, he walked to the main seat. Men, pass on my order. Gather all the captains for a meeting. As he walked to the main seat, General Pointing Star waved his hand and called the black armored guard in the corner. A black armored guard immediately walked out from the dark corner. With his hand on the hilt of the sword at his waist, he walked toward General Pointing Star. General Pointing Star frowned when he saw this guard walking toward him instead of passing on the order. He scolded somewhat angrily, "Are you deaf? Can't you hear me?" The black armored guard turned a deaf ear to him and continued walking toward him with his head lowered. General Pointing Star was already in a bad mood. Seeing the black armored guard being so rude, a ray of cold light flashed across his eyes. He raised his hand and slapped at him. "Rude bastard, how dare you ignore my order? You are courting death." A dark red palm shadow the size of a millstone slapped toward the black armored guard with a terrifying force. Then, something unexpected happened. The black armored guard suddenly raised his head and revealed a sneer on his face. His eyes were especially piercing and mocking. Clang! The black armored guard instantly drew out his mysterious black sword and slashed out a dark golden sword light toward General Pointing Star. Bow! The dark red palm shadow was shattered by the sword light, and there was a sound like a bubble bursting. The sword light's power did not decrease. Like a phantom, it split the air and hit General Pointing Star. Boom! General Pointing Star was caught off guard. His face was still filled with shock as he spat out blood and flew backward. Boom! With a loud bang, General Dian Xing broke 2 pillars in succession before falling into the main hall. He rolled on the ground for more than 10 times before he rolled to the door. The sword light slashed the ground and tore out a 1,000-foot-long trench that extended to the stairs outside the hall. Countless pebbles and wood shavings fell from the roof and landed in the main hall. General Pointing Star crawled up pathetically. He only felt that his chest was cold. He looked down and realized that there was a hideous wound on his chest that extended all the way to his abdomen. Dark red blood gushed out of the wound like spring water and sprinkled on the main hall. Through the wound, one could see his internal organs and broken bones. The heart-wrenching pain made General Pointing Star tremble. He was shocked and angry. He stared at the black armored guard in disbelief and shouted with a hoarse voice, "Bastard! Not a warrior of our race, but a foreign race." The dark golden sword light and the strength of a true god were the best proof. After shouting, General Pointing Star suddenly came to his senses. Recalling what Marshal Nan Zhennan had just said, his body suddenly stiffened, and his face was filled with horror. It's that foreign race elite. Marshal Nan had mentioned before that the defense of the God Palace was weak. If the foreign race elite took the opportunity to invade, wouldn't they destroy the God Palace? General Pointing Star did not take it to heart. He only felt that it was ridiculous. In his opinion, no matter how strong and arrogant the foreign race elite was, they would not dare to come to the heaven-punishing God Palace to die. However, he did not expect Marshal Nan's words to come true. The foreign race elite that had wreaked havoc in the Zero Mainland and killed countless captains and guards had really infiltrated the heaven-punishing God Palace. Download address, mobile reading. Chapter 2579. General Jian Xing did not expect the other party to be so audacious. After confirming the other party's identity, he quickly raised his right palm and shot out a beam of dark red light as a warning signal. However, before the dark red signal could fly out of the main hall, it was destroyed by a beam of golden sword radiance. In the next moment, the black armored guard disappeared into thin air. Whoosh! When he appeared again, he had teleported thousands of feet away and was behind General Jian Xing's swoosh. The mysterious black sword pierced through the back of General Jian Xing's head, releasing a bone-chilling black light. The speed of the sword was extremely fast, comparable to the speed of light. General Jian Xing's emotions fluctuated too much. He was caught off guard and was severely injured. His strength also decreased. As a result, he could not dodge the fatal sword. Bam! The mysterious black sword shattered General Point Star's protective divine power and pierced through the black scales on his head, directly penetrating his brain. The blade pierced through the back of General Jian Xing's head and came out of his forehead, causing blood to spurt out. The violent sword chi exploded in his head and instantly blasted his head into smithereens. A rain of blood burst out and splashed in the main hall. General Jian Xing's head was gone and only his muscular body was left. Even so, he did not die on the spot. His headless body turned around and fled without hesitation. He ran out of the main hall as fast as lightning. He was terrified. He knew that he could not defeat the other party. He only wanted to escape from the main hall and seek help from Marshal Nan. However, the black armored guard's figure flashed and chased him out of the main hall. The mysterious black sword released a beam of golden light again and shot out a dazzling beam of sword radiance. It was as if the golden sun had appeared again, dispelling the darkness of the night and illuminating the night sky. Bam! The golden sword struck General Pointing Star, splitting him into two halves from the middle. Blood spurted out. It was a ghastly sight under the golden light. However, what was more frightening was that General Jian Xing did not die even though he had lost his head and was split in half. The two halves of his body separated and fled to the left and right. As expected of a true immortal from the Heaven Punisher. His vitality is indeed strong. The black-armored guard murmured. His left hand struck out an illusory image of a dragon elephant, while his right hand slashed out a dazzling sword light. With two loud bangs, the two halves of General Pointing Star's body were blasted into pieces and scattered on the steps outside the palace. General Jian Xing was completely blasted into smithereens. This was a true death. Moreover, the dragon elephant phantom and the sword light contained the nine heavens' divine fire, which burned the flesh into ashes. As a result, General Pointing Star had completely disappeared, and there was no possibility of him being resurrected. In the square outside the palace, more than 100 alien race martial gods knelt on the ground and witnessed this scene with their own eyes. When everyone heard the sounds of fighting in the hall, they all looked up. Then, they saw an unforgettable scene. The headless General Point Star tried his best to escape, but he was cut in half by the black-armored guard. Then, before the two halves could escape, they were blasted into smithereens. Everyone's eyes widened as they were filled with shock. No one could have thought that the true God Realm General Pointing Star was actually killed by someone so effortlessly. Furthermore, the person who had attacked him was a guard from the Heaven Punishing clan. This was far too bizarre. The alien race martial gods were all flabbergasted, their minds blank. Only God Lord Silvermoon was able to maintain his clarity of mind and see the truth. It's him. He actually attacked ahead of time. The true God Realm General Pointing Star was so easily killed by him. Just who is he? How could he be so terrifyingly strong? From the looks of it, everything he said before was true. Countless thoughts flashed through God Lord Silvermoon's mind, and his heart began to beat faster. At this moment, a furious roar came from the depths of the divine palace. Vile creature! Die! As that thunderous roar came from the depths of the divine palace, a figure wrapped in red light flew out. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, that muscular figure descended from the heavens, both fists punching at the black-armored guard at the entrance. There was no doubt that this was the Southern Vanquishing Marshal. Even though General Pointing Star had not sent a signal before his death, the Southern Vanquishing Marshal had still been alarmed. After all, the battle just now had caused quite a stir, and more than half of the conference hall had collapsed. Boom! At this critical moment, the black-armored guard raised his left fist, unleashing the image of a golden dragon and elephant that clashed with the Southern Vanquishing Marshal's attack. Along with the earth-shattering explosion, violent airwaves exploded and instantly knocked down the alien race martial gods who were kneeling outside the palace. Everyone was sent flying backward, vomiting blood as they rolled across the plaza. The conference hall was also destroyed and turned into ruins. The several dozen black-armored guards on the steps outside were also obliterated by the shockwave. A deep crater was left in the ground, obscuring the night sky in a cloud of dust. The terrifying shockwave caused the ground to tremble, and the plaza was riddled with cracks. In a clash between true gods, even the shockwaves from their battle could destroy the world. The hundred-some alien race martial gods all retreated in shock to the edge of the plaza. Their gazes pierced through the darkness and fell upon the ruins. Two experts stood in the night sky, facing off against each other from 10,000 feet away. The expert on the left was a human youth dressed in white robes. This was his true body. The black-armored guard from before had only been a disguise. A white robe, a black sword, and waist-length black hair fluttered in the night wind. He was like a lofty mountain, his body exuding a supreme majesty that looked down on all living beings. The alien race martial gods stared at him, their eyes brimming with shock, worship, and excitement. God Lord Silvermoon, in particular, was so excited that his blood was boiling, his eyes shining. The Southern Vanquishing Marshal on the right was a muscular heaven-conquering expert with a pitch-black body and a head of dark red hair. He held a blood-red halberd in both hands, and his body was wreathed in dark red flames. He looked like a god of death who had walked out of hell. An invisible pressure and killing intent engulfed the entire divine palace, and the alien race martial gods didn't dare to look directly at him, fear welling up in their hearts. These two experts were gods who had surpassed the martial god realm and truly stepped into the divine Tao. "It's you, Ji Tianqing." The Southern Vanquishing Marshal stared at the white-robed youth, and when he recognized him, his pupils constricted and his face paled. Ji Tianqing calmly stared at him, a mocking smile on his lips. "Southern Vanquishing Marshal, I went to great lengths to cross half a star zone to find you. Are you very touched?" The Southern Vanquishing Marshal's face turned even colder, and he sternly barked, "Ji Tianqing. In just a few short years, you actually broke into the true god realm?" Although he couldn't see through Ji Tianqing's cultivation base, he couldn't figure out Ji Tianqing's background. But if Ji Tianqing could so quickly kill General Dian Xing and take a punch from him, he had to be at the true god realm. Ji Tianqing did not answer. Instead, he playfully said, "The Zero Continent is in chaos, and your trusted General Dian Xing has been obliterated by me. Do you like this big gift?" Chapter 2580. The South Conquering Marshal's pupils constricted, and hatred flashed in his eyes. However, he remained calm and did not show any anger or irritation. He knew very well that Ji Tianqing was deliberately provoking him to disturb his state of mind. So what? You just took advantage of the fact that Ben Shuai was in seclusion to use your tricks. The South Conquering Marshal sneered contemptuously. Do you think that you are qualified to fight with Ben Shuai just because you have reached the true immortal realm? You are too naive. Shui will soon let you know that you are seeking your own death by crossing the void to Zixiao planet. As he spoke, the South conquering marshal waved his blood-colored halberd and charged toward Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! Swoosh! Two dark red blades of light that were hundreds of meters long slashed toward Ji Tianqing with the power to destroy everything in their path. Humph! You are the one who will die. Ji Tianqing snorted coldly. He held the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and slashed out two dazzling golden sword lights. Bam! Bam! With two muffled sounds, the dark red light blades and dazzling golden sword lights collided and both collapsed at the same time. Violent waves of air exploded, blooming into a dazzling brilliance in the night sky. The next moment, the South conquering marshal rushed to Ji Tianqing and stabbed with his blood-colored halberd. Ji Tianqing held the sword of burial of heaven in front of him and blocked the attack of the halberd. Clang! With a crisp sound of metal exploding, the halberd and the sword of burial of heaven separated upon contact. Ji Tianqing and the South conquering marshal were sent flying at the same time. However, while the South conquering marshal was sent flying back thousands of feet, Ji Tianqing was sent flying 10 miles away. Although neither of them was injured, there was a difference in their strength. Ji Tianqing was obviously weaker. Seeing this, the Southern Expedition Marshal laughed ferociously. He held his halberd and attacked Ji Tianqing again. You just broke through to the true God realm and you dare to seek revenge from Shui. He must be tired of living. After testing out Ji Tianqing's strength, the Southern Expedition Marshal became more confident and confident. His attacks were also more aggressive and ferocious. Ha ha ha. That was just a warm-up. The real show is about to begin. Ji Tianqing was not afraid at all. He sneered confidently, and a golden light burst out from his body. Shwa! In the next moment, his body expanded several hundred times, turning into a golden giant that was hundreds of feet tall. Dazzling golden light swirled around his body, forming the projection of a massive golden dragon. A vast and mighty divine aura that could suppress the heavens and the earth erupted from his body. Roar! He opened his mouth and roared. Holding the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, he used the heaven-splitting earth-splitting technique and fiercely slashed at the Southern Marshal. Clang! The sword of burial of heaven that was hundreds of feet long struck the blood-colored halberd fiercely, exploding with an earth-shattering sound. The incomparably violent power immediately shook the halberd, and the Southern Expedition Marshal was also sent flying. He rolled across the sky and flew for a full 20 miles before stopping. After standing still in the night sky, he looked at Ji Tianqing in horror and roared in disbelief, "This is impossible. You actually mastered the Dragon Clan's secret technique that can increase your combat strength by 6 times. The Southern Expedition Marshal was very knowledgeable. In the process of conquering the stars, he had interacted with the Dragon Clan before. Because of this, he was even more surprised and shocked. Because he knew that the Dragon Clan was arrogant and claimed to be the most perfect clan in the world. They did not take the other clans seriously. As for the Dragon Clan's secret technique, the Dragon Clan would never teach it to outsiders. Other clans could not learn it either. At this moment, the Southern Expedition Marshal even suspected that Ji Tianqing was from the Dragon Clan. However, before he could open his mouth to question him, Ji Tianqing charged over again. Sword of Burial of Heaven. He held the Sword of Burial of Heaven with both hands and unleashed the most powerful divine power, slashing out a pitch-black sword light. Although the sword light was pitch-black, it was different from the night sky. It was a kind of solid black that contained a terrifying chill of death. The Southern Expedition Marshal's divine soul was locked by the sword light, and he was instantly filled with horror. His whole body turned cold as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. He had no time to think. Why was the power of this sword so terrifying that it could make him feel the arrival of death? At this critical moment, he could only hold the blood-colored halberd with both hands and raise it above his head to block in front of him. Bang! In the next moment, the sword of death that was thousands of feet long slashed the blood-colored halberd. The pitch-black sword light collapsed on the spot and exploded into thousands of pieces, splashing in all directions. The blood-colored halberd had a dent in it, and it trembled violently. The halberd made a dull buzzing sound as if it could not bear the burden and was about to break. The Southern Expedition Marshal was sent flying again. His face turned purple, and the blood in his body surged. Boom! He fell from the night sky and smashed into the spacious square. A deep pit with a radius of tens of thousands of feet appeared on the ground. Gravel and soil splashed out, blocking the night sky. The square was instantly turned into ruins. The entire sacred palace kept shaking. The ground cracked, and the palaces kept collapsing. The violent shock wave sent the martial gods of the foreign tribes, who were watching the battle, flying dozens of miles away. They fell into the vast sea of clouds. Many unlucky martial gods of the foreign tribes had blood spurting out of their orifices. They were seriously injured. Such an outcome made everyone turn pale with fright. They were terrified. They had not seen the power of a true god until then. It was terrifying. As martial gods, they were not qualified to interfere in a battle between true gods. Even watching the battle was very dangerous. They might even lose their lives. More than 100 martial gods of the foreign tribes flew away and retreated 200 miles away. The battle in the night sky was still going on. Ji Tianqing and the Southern Expedition Marshal were fighting fiercely. One of them was covered in golden light as if he were a god. The other kept expanding and became a pitch-black beast the size of a mountain. It waved its halberd wildly and roared. The two figures flashed in the night sky. They could change directions 3 times in an instant and move dozens of miles away. Many martial gods of the foreign tribes could not see their real bodies. They could only see their shadows. At the same time, the captains and black-armored guards of the heaven-conquering divine palace came from all directions and surrounded the battlefield. More than 100 captains, along with more than 1,000 guards, surrounded the area so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Seeing Ji Tianqing and the South conquering martial fighting, the crowd was united against a common enemy, cursing and roaring in anger. They spread out and formed a mysterious and huge battle formation. They worked together to cast divine arts and secret arts to attack Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing was too fast and he had mastered the laws of space. His body flashed and appeared and disappeared. Even the martial gods could not lock on to him. As a result, the attacks of more than 1,000 guards could not touch him at all. The divine arts cast by more than 100 captains covered a radius of 200 miles. However, they could not hit Ji Tianqing accurately. The overwhelming dark red light turned the entire divine palace into a sea of blood. However, the captains and guards could not help the Southern Expedition Marshal. Instead, they made the battlefield even more chaotic. Chapter 2581. Soon, 100 seconds had passed. Ji Tianqing and Marshal Nan had exchanged more than 3,000 blows, but there was still no winner. Both of them were slightly injured. There were a few more wounds on their bodies, and blood kept gushing out. The destructive shockwave swept through the entire divine palace and destroyed dozens of palaces. Only a few palaces were protected by the divine array and temporarily survived, but they were also on the verge of collapse. Many of the captains and guards were worried and anxious. They really wanted to help Marshal Nan kill Ji Tianqing quickly. However, they were too weak to be of any use. Instead, they kept causing trouble, making Marshal Nan feel helpless. Marshal Nan wanted to seize the opportunity to wave his blood-colored halberd twice in a row and give Ji Tianqing a fatal blow. However, at the critical moment, many captains and guards joined forces to release attacks that poured down like a torrential flood. Ji Tianqing used the law of space and teleported away. Marshal Nan was also forced to retreat. This finally angered the southern conquering marshal. He roared, "A bunch of useless trash. Don't cause trouble for Benshui. Set up the array immediately." Hearing the order, the captains showed fear in their eyes and hurriedly stopped attacking. They each led a dozen black armored guards and scattered around the battlefield, starting to set up the array. Although they were weak and could not interfere in a battle between true gods, they could set up a sealing array to seal the area. Then, they could release the unique power of the Heaven Punishers to suppress Ji Tianqing and weaken his strength. However, the South conquering marshal would not be affected by this. Thinking of this, many captains were excited and looked forward to it. However, while the idea was plentiful, the reality was bony. Whoosh! Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and instantly crossed the night sky, escaping the encirclement. He flew to the back of the Divine Palace and appeared above the Golden Sun Palace. The captains were stunned for a moment and looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Join forces to attack. They might not be able to hit Ji Tianqing. Instead, they would be in the way and affect Marshal Nan's performance. Stand by and do nothing. Isn't this too stupid? Too stupid. It was disloyal of him to watch the Southern Expedition Marshal fight alone and not help him. For a moment, the captains had no idea what to do. They could only chase after him and rush to Jinyang Palace. The Southern Expedition Marshal's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot. His eyes flashed with a cold light, and his lungs were about to explode from anger. His strength was stronger than Ji Tianqing, and he had so many subordinates, but he couldn't stop Ji Tianqing. This was a great humiliation. Moreover, there were more than 100 martial gods of the foreign tribes watching from the Sea of Clouds not far away. The South conquering marshal was utterly humiliated. "Little bastard, Benshui will tear you apart." The furious Southern Expedition marshal recklessly rushed towards Ji Tianqing, holding his halberd with both hands and chopping down. Shwa! A 3,000 zhang long glowing blade slashed down fiercely like a giant axe. This light blade was purplish-red in color, which was a sign that the power had been condensed to the limit. However, the Southern Expedition marshal regretted it as soon as the dark red light blade slashed out. He suddenly remembered that there was an ancient divine bird suppressed in the dilapidated Jinyang Palace. That was the Golden Rock, which was as powerful as him and had a noble bloodline. If the dark red light blade slashed down, it would definitely destroy the Jinyang Palace and even kill the Golden Rock. Thinking of this, the Southern Expedition marshal was filled with regret and anger. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Boom! In the deafening noise, the dark red light blade fell from the sky and instantly shattered the Jinyang Palace. The huge palace turned into ruins on the spot, and billions of pieces of gravel burst out. Ji Tianqing teleported 100 li away and easily dodged it. The Southern Expedition marshal roared and quickly chased after him with his halberd. Of course, when he passed by the ruins of the Jinyang Palace, he subconsciously glanced at it. Under the ruins, the abyss and the sealing array were still there, but they were a little broken. Seeing this, the Southern Expedition marshal was relieved. He quickly ordered the captains, "What are you waiting for? Go and suppress the divine bird. Don't let it escape." More than 100 captains suddenly felt as if they had been pardoned. They finally had something to do. They no longer had to pretend to attack. They all rushed to the ruins of the Jinyang Palace. But at this moment, the sealing array that shrouded the abyss suddenly shattered. Chirp! A clear and high-pitched chirp of a bird came from the abyss. The piercing sound clearly contained surprise and excitement, as well as monstrous killing intent. Many captains were dumbfounded. The Southern Expedition Marshal was also shocked. He quickly turned around and looked at the ruins of the Jinyang Palace. He saw a dazzling golden light shoot up from the abyss like a thunderbolt. Swoosh! In the next moment, the mountain-like golden figure instantly crossed the night sky and rushed in front of the Southern Expedition Marshal. While the Southern Expedition Marshal was shocked, he subconsciously placed his halberd in front of him. Bang! The golden figure crashed into the Southern Expedition Marshal, creating a deafening sound. The terrifying impact sent Marshal Nan Jinnan flying. 2 streams of blood spurted out from his nose and mouth. The blood-colored halberd in his hand was also sent flying. He also let out a painful scream. After flying for 30 miles and standing firmly in the night sky, he found that there was a bloody hole in his chest. His organs and bones could be seen clearly in the bloody hole. Dark red blood also gushed out like a flood. There was no doubt that this was a wound caused by the golden rock. The Southern Expedition Marshal was in unbearable pain. His body trembled. He looked up and saw the golden rock spreading its wings and floating in the night sky 40 miles away. At this moment it was not as weak and dispirited as before. It was full of energy. Its feathers were neat and bright, and it even emitted a dazzling metallic luster. Its injuries had recovered by more than half. However, there was a crack on its sharp beak. Blood kept gushing out. The attack just now was a fatal attack that it had prepared for a long time. Unfortunately, this attack did not kill the Southern Expedition Marshal. It only severely injured him. The Southern Expedition Marshal's figure flashed and grabbed the blood-colored halberd that fell from the sky. He held it firmly in his hand and blocked in front of him. He looked at the golden rock in shock and asked in disbelief, "You feathered beast, you were suppressed by Benshui. How can you recover from your injuries?" "Ha ha ha ha." The golden rock sneered and said in a mocking tone, "Of course, I have to thank your lackeys for supporting me when you were not here." "What?" The Southern Expedition Marshal frowned fiercely. His body exploded with anger as he turned to look at the captains in the night sky. Those captains were suppressed by his anger. They were all frightened and shrunk their necks, unable to speak. Only a few captains resisted the pressure of the Southern Expedition Marshal and shouted in fear, "Grand Marshal, don't listen to that B*TCH bird's provocation. Grand Marshal, we are loyal to you. How can we heal its injuries?" Chapter 2582. The Southern Conquering Marshal was only angry for a moment and was blinded by anger. After calming down, he understood that the golden rock was trying to sow discord. After all, he knew what the captains were capable of. They would not dare to do such a thing. The South Conquering Marshal looked at the golden rock, then turned to look at Ji Tianqing, who was not far away. A thought suddenly flashed through his mind. His face turned cold as he shouted at Ji Tianqing, "Ji Tianqing! Was it you?" Ji Tianqing sneered and asked, "So what if it was me?" "So what if it wasn't me? Anyway, you are already at the end of your life. Accept your fate." He and the Golden Rock were both true gods. If they joined forces to attack the South Conquering Marshal, they would definitely win. Moreover, he could fight the South Conquering Marshal to a draw alone. The Golden Rock had just appeared and severely injured the South Conquering Marshal. The outcome of the battle had already been decided. How could the South Conquering Marshal admit defeat? He sneered and said, "Arrogant. Even if you join forces, what can you do? Don't forget that this is Zixiao planet, Benshui's territory. Benshui has many warriors and more than 100 officials under his command." As he spoke, the South Conquering Marshal looked at the martial gods in the Sea of Clouds and ordered sternly, "What are you waiting for? Why don't you join forces to fight the enemy and make a name for yourself?" If anyone can kill Ji Tianqing, Ben Shuai will make him deputy marshal. If anyone can suppress the golden rock, Ben Shuai will make him a general and give him a true god weapon. The martial gods hiding in the sea of clouds had shrunk their necks and watched the battle carefully. However, no one had expected that the battle would be directed at them. The South conquering marshal had ordered them to attack Ji Tianqing and the Golden Rock. What was going on? They were only here to participate in the Myriad Countries Gods Conference to offer tributes and show their loyalty. They were not the South conquering marshal's slaves or subordinates. Why should they listen to his orders? Moreover, everyone had seen the terrifying strength of Ji Tianqing and the Golden Rock, so they were unwilling to get close to them. The martial gods of the alien races instinctively resisted the order of the Southern conquering marshal. They even stepped back subconsciously. However, the Southern Expedition Marshal's promise was extremely tempting. Whoever killed Ji Tianqing would be promoted to the position of deputy marshal. The one who suppressed the Golden Rock would be given the title of Great General and a true god weapon. This was simply too breathtaking. Many martial gods of the alien tribes were overwhelmed with emotions. Their eyes were burning with greed. However, no one was in a hurry to jump out. Everyone looked left and right, observing the reactions of others. Gradually, some people's wills were shaken, and they began to walk forward. Yes, Grand Marshal. With someone taking the lead, more people immediately followed suit. One outsider martial god after another walked out of the sea of clouds with Kenshin weapons in their hands. I am willing to serve the Grand Marshal. The Southern Expedition Marshal is invincible. He will definitely unify the entire star field. No one will be able to stop him. We are willing to charge into the enemy lines for the Grand Marshal. In just a few seconds, 40-some martial gods of the alien tribes had flown toward the battlefield, their faces brimming with anticipation. The remaining martial gods remained in the sea of clouds, not daring to act rashly. The majority of them were watching, their minds still hesitating and struggling. Only a small number of people hated the heaven-punishing race to the bone and refused to submit even when the temptation was right in front of them. For example, God Lord Silvermoon. She had been watching the battle this entire time, her blood boiling with excitement, her eyes fixed on Ji Tianqing the entire time. When she saw Ji Tianqing display his invincible might and fight to a draw with the Southern Expedition Marshal, she was so excited that she almost screamed. She finally believed in Ji Tianqing, completely. She also saw a ray of hope and silently prayed that Ji Tianqing would be able to kill the Southern Expedition Marshal. But now, the Southern Expedition Marshal had made all the martial gods of the alien tribes bow their heads. These spineless martial gods of the alien tribes wanted to point their butcher's knives at Ji Tianqing. This had crossed God Lord Silvermoon's bottom line, and she was furious. Whoosh! Her body flashed as she flew into the air. The expressions of the two old women who had been standing behind her suddenly changed, revealing a look of deep shock. Doesn't the God Lord hate the heaven-punishing race to the bone? Why would she listen to the Southern Expedition Marshal's orders? Has the God Lord's personality changed? Or was the Southern Expedition Marshal's offer too tempting? The two old women glanced at each other and secretly communicated with their divine senses. But a moment later, the two of them understood God Lord Silvermoon's intentions. God Lord Silvermoon flew into the air and blocked the path of the foreign martial gods. Filled with righteous indignation, he cursed, "You shameless, spineless idiots, stop right there." In order to make it easier to communicate, she and the rest of the crowd were speaking the rather clumsy language of the heaven-punishing. But everyone understood, and they immediately stopped and angrily glared at her. The more than 100 martial gods in the Sea of Clouds, the Southern Expedition Marshal, Ji Tianqing, and the Golden Rock all turned to her. Everyone's eyes were focused on God Lord Silvermoon, and they were filled with shock, confusion, and anger. God Lord Silvermoon was fearless as she angrily shouted, "All of you are God Lords from various great worlds, leaders of various races. Just like me, your worlds and people were invaded and massacred by the heaven-punishing race. We were all defeated. At least several billion of our people were slaughtered, and countless people were left homeless or even enslaved by the heaven-punishing race. To this day, we have brought a large number of tributes to Purple Heaven Star, but our people are still living in the abyss of suffering and darkness." God Lord Silvermoon's voice was impassioned, and her clear eyes glistened with tears. The several dozen martial gods had originally been angrily glaring at her. But now, their anger had dissipated, and they quietly lowered their heads. God Lord Silvermoon pointed at Ji Tianqing and loudly said, "We were very fortunate. After enduring the deliberate humiliation of the heaven-punishing race, we encountered a great hero. It was him who killed several hundred martial gods of the heaven-punishing race and several thousand guards of the heaven-punishing race. He threw the Zero Continent into chaos, and the people of the various races saw hope and banded together to resist the rule of the heaven-punishing race. Now, the flames of war are burning all over the continent, and the people of the various races are using their blood and lives in exchange for their freedom. It was also Ji Tianqing who killed General Jianxing and wanted to kill Marshal Jinan. He wanted to get rid of the source of all evil, unravel the scheme of the heaven-punishing race, and save all the people of the Purple Heaven Star Zone. Because just like us, he was invaded and persecuted by the heaven-punishing race. At this point, God Lord Silvermoon drew back her hand and looked disdainfully at the martial gods of the various races. She derisively scolded, "In front of the heaven-punishing race, we are all tragic victims. We should unite and work together to overthrow the rule of the heaven-punishing race and take back our freedom. But what about you? What are you doing? For the sake of Marshal Jinan's empty promise, you are ungrateful and want to attack our compatriots and kill our hero? Where is your conscience? Think about the billions of souls that died at the hands of the heaven-punishing race. Are you worthy of them?" Chapter 2583. God Lord Silvermoon's impassioned words had ignited the blood of all the foreign martial gods. Especially the last few sentences that were filled with righteousness and sternness, they struck directly at the heart and enlightened the apathetic. The 40-some foreign martial gods were all ashamed, their faces dejected as they lowered their heads, not daring to meet God Lord Silvermoon's eyes. The martial gods of the foreign tribes who were still hesitating in the sea of clouds burst into an uproar. Many of them nodded in agreement and echoed God Lord Silvermoon's words. There were even some people who flew out of the sea of clouds into the night sky and raised their arms to shout. "Everyone, I'm sure that all of you have seen that Marshal Jinan is doomed. He is no match for Ji Tianqing and the Golden Rock. The heaven-punishing race that swept through half the star zone is not invincible." An old man with white hair and a beard flew to God Lord Silvermoon's side and roared, "Tonight is the best chance for us to rise up and take back our freedom. Even if I die in battle and spill my blood over Purple Heaven Planet, this old man will not compromise." As he spoke, God Lord Silvermoon called out once more, "Everyone, although we come from different great worlds and have never met each other before, we all share the same dignity. But I believe that we all share the same dignity and pride. We are almighty martial gods who rule over our worlds and educate millions of people. Who would be willing to submit to others and become the slaves and dogs of the heaven-punishing race?" These words resonated with the foreign martial gods, and countless of them nodded in agreement. When God Lord Silvermoon saw that the conscience and courage of these people had been awakened, he struck while the iron was hot. Before this, we were scattered across the various great worlds, isolated and without help. We were defeated one by the heaven-punishing race, but we were powerless to fight back. But now, we are gathered together. A supreme expert like Ji Tianqing has appeared among us. By killing Marshal Jinan without hesitation, he has already begun this war. What are you still afraid of? What are you waiting for? If you don't join him in killing Marshal Jinan, will you ever have another chance? Unless you want to be slaves for the rest of your lives, to be humiliated and trampled upon by the heaven-punishing race. Toward the end, God Lord Silvermoon's voice grew several times louder, his tone impassioned. His voice echoed in the night sky, echoing in the ears of the non-humankind martial gods. Countless people puffed out their chests and raised their heads, revealing resolute gazes. Many martial gods even took out their divine artifacts, their bodies bursting with soaring battle intent. One roar after another came from the crowd and the sea of clouds. The Bear clan will never be slaves. Fighting for freedom, the Battle Wolf clan will never surrender. For the sake of peace, the elves are willing to shed their blood. The sun and moon can bear witness. I would rather die standing than live kneeling. The heavenly lion tribe will never back down. One hot-blooded foreign martial god after another stood at God Lord Silvermoon's side. Within a short span of 10 breaths, more than 30 foreign race martial gods had gathered around her. As a result, the more than 40 alien martial gods who wanted to besiege Ji Tianqing completely gave up on the idea. Many martial gods walked out of the crowd and stood with God Lord Silvermoon. In the sea of clouds, those hesitant martial gods also made up their minds to unwaveringly support God Lord Silvermoon. Upon seeing this, God Lord Silvermoon gave a gratified smile. She turned to Ji Tianqing, a faint smile in her eyes. Her eyes seemed to be saying, "Hey. You told me to get ready, and I've done it. I didn't disappoint you, did I?" Ji Tianqing understood the look in her eyes and gave her a slight nod, a faint smile in his eyes. God Lord Silvermoon's body instantly went stiff, her heart stopping. Her eyes widened in disbelief, only one thought running through her mind. This scoundrel. He actually knows how to smile. Ever since she had interacted with Ji Tianqing, she had only found him to be mysterious, callous, stern, and arrogant. Only now did she realize that even icebergs could melt. This mysterious and aloof fellow also had a warm heart. For a moment, God Lord Silvermoon was somewhat dazed, and she looked at Ji Tianqing with eyes brimming with favor. But the southern vanquishing marshal could no longer sit still. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and he angrily cursed, "Bastard. You bunch of bastards who don't know what's good for you. You lowly insects of a foreign race. If not for Ben Shuai's benevolence and sparing your lives, how could you have survived until now? You actually listened to that slut's instigation and dared to make an enemy of my race. Have you considered the consequences?" The South-conquering marshal glanced at all the gods of war with a fierce look, then growled with a voice as loud as a great bell, "Don't think that you can defeat me with just one Ji Tianqing and a severely wounded feathered beast. My race is invincible. Ben Shuai will quickly tear the two of them to pieces and grind their bones to dust. Now, Ben Shuai will give all of you one last chance. Those who swear fealty to Ben Shuai will be freed from slavery and will be richly rewarded. Those who oppose Ben Shuai will all be executed, and all their subjects will be slaughtered." The rolling sound waves were like muffled thunder, flowing through the night sky, deafening everyone. The hundred-some foreign race martial gods instantly grimaced, their expressions varying. Some were filled with fear, their wills beginning to waver. Some were even angrier, and their desire to resist the heaven-punishing race intensified. Some foreign race martial gods changed their minds and prepared to fly toward the southern vanquishing marshal. At this moment, Ji Tianqing sinisterly roared, "The heaven-punishing race deserves to die, and those who help the wicked are even more detestable. I will kill anyone who swears fealty to the heaven-punishing race. If you're not afraid of death, then go." As he spoke, he gripped the sword of burial of heaven in his right hand and pointed it at the restless foreign race martial gods, his entire body erupting with killing intent. The dozen or so martial gods of the alien tribes were intimidated by him. They retreated in fear. The southern vanquishing marshal was furious at this sight. Ji Tianqing. You despicable be ****, Ben Shui will kill you first. The southern vanquishing marshal could no longer suppress his anger. With a roar, he charged toward Ji Tianqing, thrusting his blood-red halberd forward. The halberd gave off a red light that shot into the sky, turning into a sharp red light that tore through the darkness and space. Ha ha ha, a loser like you dares to act tough. Ji Tianqing laughed heartily as he swung the sword of burial of heaven toward the southern vanquishing marshal. Bam! The dark golden sword light that was thousands of feet long clashed with the blood-red light, creating a loud explosion that shook the 9 heavens. The berserk shockwave, wrapped in endless fragments of light, burst out in all directions, engulfing the entire area. More than 100 foreign race martial gods, more than 100 captains of the heaven-punishing fleet, and more than 1,000 black-armored guards within 300 miles were all affected. No one was able to stay out of the battle. Bastard heaven-punishing dog, die. The golden rock roared furiously and turned into a golden light that charged toward the southern vanquishing marshal. It worked together with Ji Tianqing to pincer the southern vanquishing marshal. After exchanging a few blows, the two flew into the sky. Kill all the heaven-punishing dogs and take back our freedom. God Lord Silvermoon roared as she unsheathed her sword and charged at the captains of the heaven-punishing fleet. The 100 foreign race martial gods were not to be outdone, and they all charged with her. An earth-shattering battle broke out. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.